Right. This is another episode of Summoning Insight. And obviously, this week is the week where I actually made a post on Twitter about this, Monty. I call it Conspicuous Week. Because what's weird is if you watch all these broadcasts, all the major regions just sort of having a week off. But the problem is we can't explicitly say why, because we can't endorse whatever they might be doing on the official broadcast. So we have to just bizarrely just take a week off. Like one of the weirdest things, if you go and look, like the actual timing, if you pretend there isn't a real international tournament going on, doesn't make any sense, does it? Like LEC's just about to enter the playoffs. Like, fucking, by the way, LCK and LPL are rolling. Like LPL's about to go on to the next stage. LCK's
Right.
heating up finally. Like if there isn't anything going on, Riot, what are we doing? But obviously, the Esports World Cup is this week, and you have all the accompanying stories. By the way, I thought at the outset we could start with this small detail. This is like, here's the thing, Monty, I go the other way. Instead of starting with the serious stuff, then ending with, the cat in a tree that gets rescued by a fireman, it's a heartwarming story, or a kid in a hot air balloon like they do on the news in America because they've just had to report 17 murders of like children or whatever, right? Instead, I'm going to start with the lighthearted stuff. So one thing I did notice, Monty, it really makes you wonder about certain elements of the community, as it were, is I saw a thread. I don't know if you saw it. It's not a big deal if you did. It was just a minor thread. There was a thread about how that streamer, the Bouse FFF, the one who famously always like ints on side, he does it to like win the lane or whatever. I can't remember his reason it is. But
he
it's
like
that famous
to win the game, but he dies. Yeah, I get it.
There you go, exactly. That's like his gimmick, and obviously he's been on the LEC, etc. People did a thread about how he's accepted core streaming for the Esports World Cup, right? And as you can imagine, about half the people in there were just banging on this guy, right? Going, because they're doing that thing now, which I don't get, Monty, which is like, here's what I don't get. If you actually think that they're killing people, it's just a fact as far as I know. But the question is, if that actually bothers you to the extent you think action should be taken, what I don't get is, then surely action should be taken. People are now using this weird sliding scale of like, but how much would you need the money? And then that makes it, it's like that makes it somehow, or now we're all trying to calculate how much finances each person makes. So if they needed to take it or not, hence why famously like that Gennaro girl's in trouble because she has like all those fucking Louis Vuitton bags. And so yeah, look, I won't lie, that's a bad look. Although here's what people won't do. I will always be fair, Monty. To be fair, her problem there is one, she did it publicly so you can see it. And then two, that looks frivolous, right? But I will say, to be fair, Monty, I know some CS people who have like a $20,000 inventory in the game of skins, which is equally as ridiculous.
Or like 100. I mean, the Valorant players who are all flexing their insanely ugly watches.
Yeah, or like I say, all those booster packs of Pokemon all the streamers were buying 5 years ago. Whatever. Everyone can be friends. But anyway, the point is what I was going to get to. The reason the Bouse one's weird is, one, he's not really a big esports figure. Two, as far as I know, he doesn't even usually do core streaming stuff. He's just doing it for this one because if you notice, it doesn't seem like many people accepted. And then lastly, here's the real detail, because spoiler, this was never about the Bouse. This was a setup, Monty. Well, the reason I say it's interesting how certain communities react is because I saw lots of comments in there like, Doublelift did accept. So I just did a quick search, Doublelift. They're all thread about Doublelift. By the way, which would be more relevant to an esports crowd? The Bouse core streaming the event. Is anyone even going to watch that, by the way? Or Doublelift, one of the most famous figures ever in Western League. How does he not have his thread, Monty, where every comment's like? Because, by the way, the reason why that one's mad, Monty, is obviously he doesn't need the money. If there's anyone in this conversation, like I told you, I don't even know if the Gennaro girl does need the money. Maybe she just spent it all on fucking handbags, but she hasn't offered aside from that. I'll tell you what, Monty, we can categorically say Doublelift does not need the money. He's got fucking millions. In fact, the joke is he would even flex on people like us. The fact that he has millions and doesn't need to work again and can do whatever he wants. So he essentially just doesn't give a fuck. So it's okay, but I just noticed the community's let him slide. He gets to skate as usual, mate. What's going on with that?
I just want to know where his support of Biofrost is that he and Lena were touting on Twitter.
Well, it's the thing, Monty. Didn't Lena say something to the effect? Wasn't the gist of it like, we'd support you no matter who you are? Well, not if he's Saudi, apparently, Lena. Just saying. If he was Saudi Arabian, you wouldn't support him, would you? Just saying. Then again, though, Monty, here's the harsh joke. But again, if you get offended by these, you have to, by definition, be offended by the Saudis and anyone associated. So my loophole is activated. I've actually managed to bring all my humor from 2013 back through the loophole that you can't get offended. So the joke being, would it be the first time the ADC was a selfish bastard and just let his support die just so he could get some more gold? Not bad there, Monty. It's not my best work, but it's decent. No one else is doing these jokes, are they? I'm on the cutting edge right now, mate. Much as if Doublelift let Biofrost live in Saudi Arabia, Biofrost might be on the cutting edge of his head coming off his body. Do you know what the maddest things, Monty? That's why actually that whole topic of like they let them drive is mental. Guys, even if they let women drive, those women last year drove on a day when like 100 people were executed by the state. Like, you are aware, like that will always top that. I don't know how cool you think driving is. I'm not really a driver myself, but that'll always be up here. And also, can someone please, I've just realized, can someone please just make a meme movie poster of the film Drive and make it about Saudi Arabian esports? Like, if you do that, send it to me on Twitter as usual, at Thorin. I'll retweet it. I like stuff like that.
I did find it odd that they were like targeting him. I mean, also, this to put this in a bigger perspective, nobody should be targeting
No, he's never flexed anything politically.
No.
The most that's just a streamer in league. I don't think he's ever done any grandstanding. It's a bit weird, isn't it?
I mean, and the thing is, again, we need to go back to the actual point here, which is not to throw the co-streamers or the casters or the teams under the bus.
Yes,
can we please throw the developers under the bus?
Yeah.
The people who are giving their licenses. Remember, Riot, Valve, Epic, Activision Blizzard. They can stop this in a heartbeat by just saying,
well, they literally couldn't have a league tournament, of course. Yeah.
You don't get to have our license. You don't get to have our IP. Yep. They can stop it instantaneously. So the real bad guys here are the developers. If you're going to get mad at anybody, please get mad at the developers and the publishers for letting them, actually, when I say letting them, I mean charging them to use their IPs. And the reason they're doing this, guys, is because they've been told by the Saudis, hey, in the future, we're just going to take a bunch of those event costs off you. So don't worry about it. It's going to be super cheap or not free for you guys. We'll just run your circuits for you. And then they say, oh, yeah, we would like to have all of our marketing expenses just taken off our plate because we still get all the upside of that. So really, guys, please do not blame the people who are working these events. On the team and caster side, there is not a choice. Let me be clear. There isn't a world where the Saudis don't continue to have a major, stake in this ecosystem. In certain games, it's impossible to escape ESL. So if you turn this down, you might torpedo all of your ESL events, even if they're not in Saudi Arabia, right? As a team, you can't field rosters if they're going to be major events in Saudi Arabia with huge prize pools. So you have to be one of the partner teams. If you really want to get mad at somebody, please get mad at Riot. Oh, but you can't because they're all on vacation this week. Mysteriously, they've just taken the week off. So nobody's answering the phones. Nobody's looking at anything. It's their summer break over this time period. So
because here's the thing, Monty, even though, by the way, we're not a jukebox, we're not obliged to fucking service requests from randoms. I will point out, there's a weird thing people keep doing where they just refuse to listen to what the words we're actually saying, Monty. So their take for real is, you just think Saudi is bad, which is like, as if that was the take. I've only done about 1,000 versions of like, that's not the take. That was never the take. In fact, I've said myself on all these shows, I don't give a fuck about Saudi Arabia. I don't care about a single person in Saudi Arabia, by the way. By the way, are you ready? Here's how I actually am legit and an authentic person. If Western people go there that I know in pro gaming and esports, like famous players, now I care. I care about what happens to that person, but I don't pretend to be a bleeding heart who cares about the entire world. I actually think, by the way, if you want an extreme philosophical point, I think it's absurd to suggest, right, I'm someone who speaks for and will fight for every single person in the world who does similar things with their genitals as me. Like, what sort of mental conceit would that even be if it was plausible? Like, so I don't pretend to be a superhuman, mate. I care about like people I know, people like. By the way, my culture, my country, I'm worrying about that more. There's plenty of problems fucking back home. So here's the point, right? People are doing this thing, Monty, where they think they've got us. They're like, oh, you're not calling out D-God and Wolf, are you? Yeah, you know why? Spoiler, I just did it right now as Monty was talking. I pulled up Wolf's Twitter. I put D-Gon rather. I put in D-Gon in advanced search. I put in LGBT, nothing. I put in LGBTQ, nothing. He's never tweeted about those topics, if you don't know, by the way. So as far as I know, you could be wrong. If so, produce a tweet. I've never seen D-Gon flex that angle. In fact, to me, it's one of the reasons I like D-Gon. I consider him actually a professional who's kind of in the old mold. He just gets on with the game. He just does the video. I'm sure, look, if I went back, I'd imagine he might have done like, I don't know, BLM posts or something, which would be irrelevant relevant to Saudi Arabia. But that's what's weird. Why would we call him out? Again, we're not calling people out for going to Saudi Arabia. Spoiler, we're not calling Faker out, are we? He's going there right now. He's going to try and win that tournament. We're not going, wow, Faker, do you need the money, bro? Don't you have million? We're not doing that, are we? Because in this scenario, Faker, as far as I know, again, also has, I mean, I can almost guarantee Faker hasn't flexed LGBTQ, but enough about Korean esports and that thing you all don't want to talk about, eh? I noticed how that was never a weird sort of cancellation thing for all this, but let's ignore your goat and what he thinks about gay people. So I've never had any issue to call out Dagon. By the way, same thing with Wolf. As far as I know, I mean, here's the thing. If you don't know, because Wolf's worked a million events in every game, guys, he's smart enough not to take that sort of stupid stance anyway. He knows you have to go where the gig is. Like, that's all esports is. You know, the sad thing, I'll actually tie the Wolf thing back to this point, Monty. The real reason why this entire thing is so annoying, and I've always said, don't we all wish we could just go back in a time machine 5 years and undo all the tweets and just attend whatever events? Because, bro, if you know where esports came from, if you're someone like Wolf, he came from the days when, like, going to a LAN was cool, when getting paid was amazing, when to
get paid $100 was incredible.
when to be able to, like, barely live off esports was amazing, and you were bragging about that gig. Like, someone like that isn't here to be, like, flexing some crazy angle. So, no, I don't call those people out. Just like a bunch of other people who attend the event who have, as far as I haven't said anything, I don't have an issue with it. They can choose what they want. Well, and I'm going to be watching it, spoiler.
It's also that LFN isn't a monolith, guys. We are a series of individuals who
it's also their own choice too, buddy. They're not doing it on behalf of LFN either, are they? They're going on their own account.
Well,
we're not their
like,
bosses like that,
none
guys.
of us agree on everything, guys.
Oh, no.
And it's like, we don't, you know, if we don't really have anything to do with people's independent opinions one way or another. So
they can do what they want.
Whatever.
They do what they want. All good by me.
So, yeah, I mean, look, and also for those of you who want us to, for whatever reason, even though there hasn't been, as far as we are aware, any hypocrisy on this front, to call out people on shows, it's like, guys, whenever we have guests on our shows, we don't attack them. We don't set up traps for those guests. You know what I mean? Like, sure, we'll have in-depth discussions, but we don't, as a policy, we don't really call out guests on our shows or other hosts. It's not fun most of the time. So, doesn't create good content, turns out.
There is an interesting detail, though, is how we can tie this into the Esports World Cup, though, Monty, because I saw a thread, and I've looked it up, looks accurate. This is where people don't keep track of these things. Obviously, Gen G is one of the teams attending the tournament. Based on this Reddit thread, it looks correct when I looked at it. Gen G is on the biggest winning streak ever.
That's what I said last week.
In series play. Because if people don't think about it, right, here's the part you're going to miss. You're going to think there should be loads more teams. No, because, for example, remember, JDG used to enter fucking one of the splits in the LPL every time, so they never got a streak like this. They would always get broken at like 10 or whatever. In fact, probably the one that would shock people, because I knew the WE one from way back. The one that would shock people, obviously, the early T1 one. It's the one where they won the first split and they just won like every fucking series, didn't they? So actually, that's a detail. Like, I hope people keep that running, because obviously in theory, I don't know if you're going to count the Esports World Cup for this, but you could. There could be 3 more matches there. Like this, it just ties into what we were talking about last week, Monty. Like, you actually have to put this team in a historical context, not just the best.
When we were talking about it last week, I said that the last time that they had lost a best of series was when they lost 2-0 to KT on Valentine's Day, so February 14th. They literally have not lost a series since February 14th. That was almost 5 months ago, guys. Because you remember they went through all of MSI through the upper bracket, won through the winner's bracket, won the finals, got back, haven't dropped a series in the first part. We're not finished with the first round robin yet as we take this break for the Esports World Cup, but they haven't lost then either. So, and they were also, you know, in the upper bracket throughout spring playoffs. And they were close to losing that final. They were close to losing some of these matches, but ultimately they prevailed. And, you know, now they are on this insane win streak that I don't think is likely to be broken. Although, Thorin, as we preview the Esports World Cup, because we're some of the people who are actually going to talk about this tournament, Top Esports might be the second best team in the world. And they are, in fact, playing them in the first round of this competition. So I think one of the
MSI.
I think one of the unfortunate things is that in the current meta, and given
it's a big 3, they could get beaten. This could break the streak, right?
Yeah, and this might be, unfortunately, because of the way that the bracket was set up, this might actually be the equivalent of the finals of this tournament. Now, there are a lot of caveats. Like, obviously, we didn't think Top was going to win MSI because Cream was at his first international tournament. Cream actually, you know, generally had a poor event. And Tian, well, You know, there's the 2019 like World's MVP TN, and then there's the Dade Award TN at international events. So his variance has been enormous. And so will TN be that way again? But if you look at this team right now, you probably think that they're the better of the two Chinese teams that are attending, simply because while BLG has been good, it looks like a good meta for Jun, obviously, with like Brand and Nidalee and AP carries. Bin is playing really well right now. Elk and On, when they haven't been played through and they don't have a lot of resources, haven't been as good as they were in the spring. And Knight has been bad, like actively pretty bad.
Easily his worst split ever. Yeah.
Yeah, so far. I mean, look, let's not read too much into the placements. You know, the real meat of LPL is happening after Esports World Cup when all the good teams are in Group A. That's what we're really going to be looking at. But Knight hasn't looked good, you know, if we're being honest. So I wouldn't say that I think Billy is the #1 Chinese roster coming out right now. And that's going to make that T1 series very interesting, because that feels like it could go either way with Knight in his current form. And then Top Esports, like, no doubt, I don't think they will win, but they are a scary team, and they might be the second best team at this event.
Definitely a tough draw. I mean, as we pointed out last week, there's more WWE to this draw than there is traditional sports. Like, obviously, it's absurd that like Gen G has to play Top Esports, meanwhile Team Liquid plays Fnatic. Like, that is by definition absurd, guys. Isn't it? Come on. What is that seeding, for fuck's sake?
Yeah. I mean, look, Team Liquid's in a good spot right now. They kind of finished off with a shaky game this past week against 100 Thieves, but it's not like Humanoid's been in great form recently, right? If you're gonna beat Team Liquid, you would hope to maybe play through your mid lane, doing a weaker mid laner in APA, but with Humanoid's present form, might be a bit rough. You have to feel like that first matchup, especially with the jet lag, might be a little bit of a clown fiesta. Maybe Team Liquid can take that one again.
You know, that's one thing people haven't thought about as well, Monty. Bro, the reason why this format has to just be for this year, there's no way this is a tournament that's going to happen yearly, is obvious, Monty. So you're telling, like, let's imagine Team Liquid lost the match, right? So you're telling me they're going to fly all the way to Saudi Arabia, take all the abuse of attending this event, and then get knocked out for a BL3? You could lose 2 games then on your bike home. Like, that's absurd. 2 matches and then you're off. 2 games, you can get 0-2, and it's out. It's only a BL3.
You get $50,000.
What a fucking weird concept.
Yeah, look, this is just a trial run for probably something much bigger next year. We will see where all of this goes, obviously. I mean, it feels like either the choice is we have MSI here, or, you know, because this event lasts 2 months, League of Legends is like we have MSI, and then a month later we have an international event towards the end of August. I suppose that's a possibility as well. But I mean, with the
seems a bit weird though, right?
Yeah, it feels like the intention is very much this is the pilot event to see if they could work, you know, have MSI in Riyadh next year.
By the way, it's even a smart move if you're the Saudis, because I'll tell you what, I told you, because of the format, everyone's going to love MSI every year if they keep this format. So it's the best possible sports washing league product you could buy is MSI. Like, it's the fucking best tournament. Who doesn't like it? It's baller. If I wanted to win people over, that's the one I'd pay for, mate.
Yeah. So, yeah, anyway, as for the other ones, like BLG versus T1 could be very interesting, just because T1 doesn't feel very settled in this meta, and now you have like
both in bad shape. Yeah,
the question marks surrounding Knight. Faker hasn't been amazing himself. Like, Faker hasn't looked very comfortable in the AD mid meta. They just haven't been a team. You know, T1 likes to play through kind of owners' aggressive jungling and like bot lane advantages like BLG did. So it feels like both the bot lanes are a bit off as well heading into this one. So I don't know. I think I have a very tough time calling BLG versus T1. But because the T1 fans will push the line into horrendous, you're definitely going to bet on BLG. Because the T1 fans always tilt it so heavily towards T1 that their opponents get massive advantages. So certainly the opportunity for BLG to take that win, and probably I would say I would predict them anyway. I would maybe give them a slight edge in this matchup. And then Gen G, an edge for sure, but with the understanding that top esports might be able to pull something off. Feels like G2 versus FlyQuest is a foregone conclusion towards G2, and then another toss-up in Team Liquid versus Fnatic. But I would tip it actually towards Team Liquid right now. They've had some mistakes, but Fnatic didn't end the season very strong, and Team Liquid, they did have some mistakes against 100 Thieves, but I think still fundamentally in terms of teamwork, a stronger team than Fnatic right now.
By the way, that's why when this last week, the glorious telecom upset happened of KT, I actually did have the bet on KT because thanks to you T1 fans, you obviously drive T1 down to fucking no odds every time. So I had like 5 odds on KT, Monty, which, look, I never really thought they were going to win. I keep it real, mate, but I'll take a fucking 5 odds for a BO3 all day. And as usual, we can actually talk about that a bit, Monty, because what I would say is this, is like, it's actually, I've realized you have to sometimes just lean into the madness and the chaos of esports, right? I do despise Piotr, but it is funny as fuck the way he just like has the game of his life against T1. It's because he's done it a few times now. It's actually, it's like he doesn't do anything else all year. Then just does like the actual game of his life. It's mental, isn't it? What a freak!
It's also that it was in because they put this match. So what they did, for you guys who don't know, this telecom war was supposed to be the T1 home ground, which was sort of like
exactly.
When the Overwatch League teams would do the home stands, and so they went off to a different city in Korea, rented a stadium. There were KT fans there, but it was definitely very
like 98% T1 fans, wouldn't they? Come on, which is why it's even more glorious they lost this one.
Well, and it's not only that, but it's like what was fun, and I think this was a really good idea, is they actually had 2 T1 versus KT matches in the same day. So they had the Challengers League play, so the tier 2,
right. Okay,
immediately before, and as a warm up match, and then they played the best of 3 between the LCK teams right after. KT won them both, by the way, which is even funnier. So it was good scheduling on the part of the LCK, and I think it was really fun to see it, but it does make it even funnier that KT was actually able to pull this off. And I mean, Piotr did have some very good games. I am the number 1 Piotr hater, but you really see the flaws in T1 in this meta when, oh boy, we get to see 3 games of Gumayushi Zeri. And look, Gumayushi is not the greatest Zeri player. He has gotten individually better, but the problem is T1 just plays very badly with him on Zeri because their main strength with this 5-player roster has never actually been like standard 5 versus 5 front to back team fighting. It's been pick compositions. It's been dominating through bot lane, snowballing that into wins, tricky Baron plays, right? And Zeri really doesn't do any of these things particularly well.
Oh no.
So it really it feels like it doesn't enable their style very much. And then you get Owner, who's on the Zyra. He is not used to. There's a massive difference if you watch the 3rd game between Owner's Zyra and Canyon's Zyra, where Canyon plays much more cautiously and around objectives. But Owner has never really been that guy. He's never been, I really want to path very efficiently and have the objectives guy. He's the, I'm going to invade you and duel you and dive a turret guy. And so to have him on the Zyra, like, it just doesn't feel good when you watch him and Piotr is able to close on Viego instantly, and he's not playing with that same level of respect because he feels like he can always duel. But if you close on Zyra, like, you just die. That's what happens. So then we also had Faker on the Tristana. Faker's Tristana has overall been kind of underwhelming. Also, I think what was interesting and something that I could have analyzed before this series but didn't think about was that because it's BDD versus Faker, we ended up with some really, I'm not going to say off meta, but fringe meta picks, like by trading Azir and Talia, because usually the priorities have been Corki, Tristana, Yone, right? But neither BDD nor Faker are really known for those champions. I mean, Faker with Corki, but that was before the rework, right? And now we end up with both of these guys are just traditionally more comfortable on control mages, and they are both signature Azir players. And so here's an opportunity where both of them can kind of ban out, like KT's just like banning Corki and Trist and Ashe. And then it's opening up Faker versus BDD and control mage matchups. And KT also feels much more comfortable because here's the thing. KT has never been the team to want to play the Zyra either. They want to play Viego. They want to play Lee Sin, right?
Yeah, of course.
And, you know, they look good. Perfect looked really good on the Rumble. Why did T1 leave up the Rumble for Perfect? Who knows? That was a not great decision on their part. Why is T1 playing Zeri when Vi is up and Pyosik is playing Vi? So you actually have targeted CC, because Zeri, her whole thing is, please do not pick Vi or Nautilus against me that have targeted CC, you know, that can shut me down.
Dude, hasn't the universe just shown us Zeri meta equals not T1 meta? That's just been history so far.
Yeah.
Every time that happens, you'll just know they're going to fucking flounder a bit, right?
Yeah. So and they picked Zeri all 3 games, and like, I don't know why this was the game plan coming in. Even though it wasn't obviously the most meta picks, like Deft going back to Jinx, one of his signature champions. Ezreal is meta. He's picking it up, right? Deft had a bad series, though. Deft had a really bad. I mean, he played really badly in this series, and they still managed to win because his teammates were good enough. But he also, you know, he should never be getting caught out in some of these situations. Like, he should not be getting Skarner ulted by Zeus when he has Flash and E up. Like, that's not acceptable as an Ezreal player. But everybody else on KT, I think, stepped up in a big way, and it was surprising. It was very entertaining. And Pyosik had a hell of a day. So here we are. KT somehow beats T1.
But remember, though, if you ever thought things like JDG could beat Cheat, well, you're just a hater. You just obviously have hatred in your heart for Faker. Meanwhile, back home, just losing to people who are all washed. Like, the joke is half of this, like, this is like actually like this looks like a fucking League of Legends senior game. What are you talking about? It's like all the retired players from the Hall of Fame or something. What are you talking about? Like, that's the one thing about KT, though. To be fair, at least obviously the players historically are great, even if they're not that good now. They do have some people who could wake up and have a flashback game, you know.
Thorin, we have to live in a world where this KT garbage roster might literally be the only team that beats Gen G this year. That's the world we have to fucking live in.
For real. Yeah,
which is tilting, right? Yeah. I mean, it does show the ceiling of the KT players, which nobody ever doubted the ceiling of these players. The problem was the inconsistency of these players and the fact that it's not even like, oh, it's a coin flip. 50% of the time you get them and they're amazing. 50% of the time they're bad. It's like 85% of the time they're bad. And then 15% of the time they're amazing. And then on this day, both Pyosik and Beryl decided to be amazing at the same time. Like, you don't get that very often. So...
that is definitely the story of Beryl's career as well. Like, he just fucking, like, every now and then he just pulls out some bullshit game. You're like, no, whatever. He still does those ridiculous picks too. He's still a ridiculous human being.
But
at least he's a meme, though. At least he leans into it a bit. I actually appreciate he sort of gets it. He almost knows he's a meme. That's what I like about Beryl.
I mean, his mechanics are garbage at this point in time. But I guess if he's just going to play Alistair, Leona, and Braum, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Going back to his signature kind of engaged champions, and it's okay. It's okay. It was a fun series, though. I did really enjoy KT winning, in spite of the fact that I do hate this iteration of KT, just because it was so funny to watch T1 losing under those circumstances and right before they head to this international event.
That's the thing, though, Monty. I actually think, in a weird way, though, that actually T1 has everything to gain from the Esports World Cup, Monty. It's a break from LCK play. By the way, if you get some wins, if you beat like BLG, even though it's a BL3, that's going to look good on the resume. Obviously, people know they were the LPL champions. Like, if you can go to the finals after that and then play baby Gen G again, like this, that's the real thing. As much as I want to laugh that T1's not in great shape right now, to be fair, Monty, if you're ever going to slump, now's the time to slump. Like, you still got time to pick it up and peak for the playoffs, go to Worlds and be good. Like, just get out of the way now. And obviously, like you said, the patch could change. So
there's also
just champions.
There's no way that this meta is allowed to continue existing by Riot. Because Riot's never liked a prolonged jungle carry meta. You know, in the past, when we've seen, oh, it's time for Graves and Nidalee and Karthus, like, it lasts for a little bit, but then they just destroy it again, right? And part of the existence of the AP farming champions right now is because we have champions like Corki and Trist in the mid lane that are AD and that are very powerful in lane. So if you can use AD champs to get lane priority, not only do you need balance, through AP champions in other places, and we've seen that sometimes with Ziggs in the bot lane or Rumble in the top lane, but most of the time with AP junglers, and also the fact that almost certainly Faded Ashes is going to get nerfed. And the thing about Faded Ashes is that it is an item that solves a lot of the clear speed issues in the early game that AP junglers have. It allows them to clear even faster, right? It's not really issues. It's more like it enables them, right? And the thing is that if you do a jungle full clear and you have 900 gold, you just go back and pick up Faded Ashes, and then now you have a dot to clear the jungle. It's an extremely good first buy. It's an extremely good transitional item into like Liandry's or Blackfire Torch. And this speed of clearing allows them to farm up more, which allows you to get into AP in the late game even better, which then means like, oh, we want to play AD mid laners, right? And it's gotten to the point, guys, where teams like Gen G, you're going so far down the list of AD mid laners at this point in time. Trophy's playing Lucian. He's the only one doing that in the world. It's like the tier list is like Corki, Trist, then it's like Yone, and then some European teams are like playing Varus now or Lucian. Like you're even playing what I would argue are not even really good AD mid laners because Canyon is so enabled by this that it feels like the trade-off is worth it, and it is. I mean, Canyon's been amazing.
But basically, the logical thing is if they just nerf the item, it will probably stop this whole cascade effect, do you think?
Well, I mean, you probably nerf the mid laners too, because if you don't have AD mid laners, then you probably can't play as many AP junglers, right?
Right.
So, but it is a very strong item. It is a very strong item. So
people don't know as well, Trophy also has just a bonkers champion pool right now. You can just play anything he wants, can't he? Just literally anything he wants at this point. Pull anything out.
So, but I don't think Riot's like, we really love jungle being a primarily AP role and Tristana mid being the best mid lane champion in the game. Like, I can't imagine they're sitting there being happy with that. Freak's not looking at that on the balance team and saying, this is really the direction we want to go. What you want, I think, if you're Riot as a jungler, is more skirmishers, playmaking champions. Like, if I was Riot, when Lee Sin is meta, I would always feel good about jungling at the pro level because Lee Sin's an exciting champion to watch. He rewards playmaking, but he's not super oppressive. He's not going to take over a game unless you're a really like giant Lee Sin god. And even then it's okay because you're like, it's a lot about mechanical prowess and game sense. So are we really upset that Lee Sin would be strong under those circumstances? Anyway, that's just how it feels to me. At the very least, is like, I don't think this meta is going to persist. And this meta is very good for Gen G. It's very good for certain teams. Very good for Gen G, for example.
It definitely skews the whole Gen G T1 thing. It's better for Gen G, it's worse for T1. Like, obviously, the joke is, if you flip it and we go to, like, I don't know, tank junglers, then Canyon's not going to be as good, is he? Like, you're going to drop off a bit,
Well, I mean, that's how they played in spring. They still won. When he's on Sejuani and Maokai.
Individually, he won't be as dangerous, really,
Yeah, but it does feel like this really is the perfect meta for Gen G. In the same way that when T1 discovered like double Hail of Blades, it was just like a great meta for T1. When they were able to play like Gragas Lee Sin mid a couple of years ago, is great meta for T1 because they could really dive turrets super easily. So there have been a bunch of good T1 metas. The team that it might actually be good for is JDG this meta because of Kanavi and Ruler. Feel like it's a really natural fit for them, and with Sheer kind of getting better and better on that roster too. There are teams that I think this meta is good for, but ultimately, like, it's a pretty fringe meta, and it's fun when we see it, but I don't think Riot's vision for League of Legends is, let's farm a bunch of AP junglers. Like, that's just, I don't think so.
I mean, the problem is no one, for competitive, no one wants to watch farming junglers, obviously. People want to see the ganking. I mean, there's a reason why they made jungle stronger and stronger over the years. People just want to see it interact with the game all the time and have agency, etc. By the way, I don't know if you saw, but there was this clip that people were going mad over in LEC, where on the sack, Dom and Gilius like flamed Jankos for saying he like misplayed the Sejuani play. And if you watch it, right, Jankos himself explained that basically like they're wrong. They just didn't understand the way like the proc works on Sejuani, right?
Which is, I didn't know that either.
No, I didn't either. Like, I feel don't know, that's like super intricate, like technical detail stuff, obviously, right? When he responded, what I thought was funny was this detail, Monty, was the response on Reddit was everyone just doing that thing that they love, where even though, remember, I learned this in CS, Monty, which is the fakest shit of all time is when a fan says, you don't know anything, but then they give the reason, because they just changed the reason for everyone, Monty. So the joke I used to do in CS was, they used to tell me I know nothing about CS, because I was never a pro, but then they'll tell Maniac he knows nothing, and he was in the semis of a major. They'll tell Kassad he knows nothing and he coached like Australians to a semis major. They'll tell Janko he didn't know anything. He played when he coached. You know what I mean? Like, essentially, at the end of the day, they just get to choose who knows anything, not the other way around. They don't know who knows nothing. So similarly, right, everyone was loving in this thread, Monty, the idea that Dom and Gilius, right, stop, guys, because you didn't even do this. They were professional jungle players, you fucking imbeciles. They both professionally played. By the way, Gilius was even playing like a couple of years ago, for fuck's sake, like in SK Game, remember? So it's not like
on
their
this version of Sejuani, by the way. This version. Like there was an older version. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, what that shows is just that, like, the intricate level of detail of, like, especially things, famously, Monty, is always things like procs. Like, that's always really complicated to calculate, and you have to know exactly how the mechanisms work, etc. in the game, right? First of all, they obviously are generally qualified to give a take. Secondly, they obviously were wrong in this case, and they admitted it. But I thought what was funny was this, Monty. This is what I love, is the way all the thread was like, yeah, see? Oh, they don't know what they're talking about. Wow. Imagine being a pro and then having someone who doesn't even know what they're talking about critique you. And I thought, bro, you're describing yourself on Reddit. That's you. Now imagine that scenario, but they're top level pros, mate. At least they have a chance to be right. Now imagine you, a little shitter that once ever on your best season with a 10-game streak that you got lucky on and got boosted, got like into plat once and then quickly dropped out, and you've spent 4 years dining out on like your real level if you didn't get unlucky in your promos, and then you sit down and then my mate Larson goes into lane and does like a masterclass laning phase but loses the game in LEC, and you go, his laning is trash, he didn't know, why did he back at that time? And then he's supposed to go, well, not to be dismissive, you know, they could know everything even though they're just a pro, I'll just take that on board. Well, the reason why I did, like, give me a break, like, by your own logic, guys, no one should ever listen to a single opinion you have, like, not by, because I'm with you. If we want to critique, you don't have any position, you're not even in the ball. At least Gilius and Dom could have guessed and potentially been right. Well, most fans, like, I can tell you, by the way, the ones that really hate you the most are all the top laners, because every time a top laner tries to fix his wave, Monty, by killing the wave knowing he'll die, a fan goes, why did he stay? Now he's just griefed. And then he's like, bro, the whole game was over if I didn't do that. So pros hate you guys. You're right. It is annoying, but that's you guys. Not
also, guys, we're talking about a game with like spaghetti code and 170 champions and insane interactions. And no pro, no analyst, nobody knows everything about this game. And so it's an understandable mistake that Dom also owned publicly and said, like, I was wrong about this. Sorry.
Really cool. Yeah.
And nobody seems to be angry at it. Like, I think Jankos, it was cool to hear Jankos talk about it, in my opinion. I thought it was funny the way that he did it. As an example, guys, I'm trying to remember the exact Thresh interaction, but many years ago, you guys remember Edward, formerly of Gambit Moscow 5, the support player. He was known as the Thresh Prince, and there was a Thresh mechanic that I told him about that he didn't even know, which I think it was that if you are standing in a brush and they can't see you, they can't see the souls that have been dropped. I think that's the mechanic I told him about, but he was like, maybe he'll correct me on this one.
Someone might not know that, though. It's enough of a fringe thing, right?
Right. So it's like, because, you know, that way you can hide in a bush and not be found out, right? But I think he didn't know that that was the case. And this guy was one of the best Thresh players in the fucking world at the time. And it's like, there are all kinds of interactions like this. And you're going to have people with different levels of expertise in various different subjects. But this game is so enormously complicated that nobody knows everything about this game. And also, you know, the point I made on the Power Spike about this too, is that as a caster or as a co-streamer, right, or as an analyst, you are basically, especially Dom, who does so many different leagues live, you guys are asking a dude who, you know, by all accounts, by the end of these games, he could have been on his 12th game of the day doing this across multiple leagues. He could be tired out of his fucking mind. And he is streaming to thousands of people. You know, the people who watch his VOD will be tens of thousands more by the end of it all. And it's like, if he makes a single mistake, which is Guaranteed, guys. Anybody who is doing live broadcasts.
Not doing Monty. Isn't the problem here that they're acting like he never makes a mistake? Everything he says is an accurate representation of his total knowledge of the game, which I can tell you know this. That's not the case with broadcast at all. It's very easy actually on broadcast to slip up. The classic one I always think, Monty, is this. The easiest one is to like transpose someone's name in your mind. You know, you say the name of the wrong person, or you do, like, I tell you what I get wrong all the time, Monty. You probably heard me do it a million times, is you'll start talking and you'll be analysing a team, and then you'll remember like, oh shit, I've just said the jungler that was on the last split, not this one. Yeah. And then the fan will be like, he doesn't even know the players. It's like, I do, but in the moment my brain is locked into a tiny fragment that's on camera trying to talk to you and think while speaking like I'm playing the fucking bagpipes. Straight fire reference, bro. Okay, whatever.
but I mean, it is really hard. And for those of people who haven't done it, imagine if you were in university and you were taking an oral exam on a very difficult subject. Imagine if you were like defending your PhD thesis, right? Sure. And you're expected to know everything and represent it accurately via your words, except now imagine that hundreds of thousands of people are watching you defend your PhD thesis, waiting for you to slip up, and then they're just going to pester you on the internet about minor mistakes that you made. And they're never going to talk about the literal thousands of times you were correct. They're going to talk about the very few instances when you're wrong.
I've got another one for you. Here's another obvious one from your world, Monty. How about forgetting a line in a play or something? Of course, the person does know the line, just the pressure got to them, or someone threw them off and they forget the line, or they bungle it. You know, it's easy to do. It's very human.
I've been there. You know what I mean? I've been in over 30 live theater productions in my life, and covering for other actors when they forget a line and like nudging them back in and prompting them back in, or, you know, or hoping that people have your back there when you forget your line yourself.
I just realized, Monty, I know what you need to do. This is actually, I'm going to say, someone mark this down. This idea isn't just an idle thought. It's what Monty has to be the end goal of Last Free Nation, which is if Monty gets the funding and the resources, he needs to combine, which a lot of you won't even know, but for the old school heads, there's going to be some old school lore. Remember back in the early days of League when Monty did that thing, which if you remember, I never retweeted him, I never fucked him. I think it's nonsense, but Monty used to do that thing where he would rewrite like Disney songs in the style of like League lyrics. He was loving it because it's the sort of nerd shit he's on, but I was always like, fucking this shit. But anyway, because I didn't even like those songs in the first place. So anyway, when he would do that, like obviously he had the one that was like the Mulan one, like We'll Make a Man if you was that for like Double If that one was, right?
It was a CLG boot camp.
Oh, CLG, okay. But anyway, what you should obviously do, Monty, because you would obviously this will be right up your alley, is we should in the future make a very small theatre production, like a live musical, and it would be in the vein of Book of Mormon, but it would be about Riot / League of Legends, and we could do all kinds of sustainability. You could have all sorts of fucking songs. Yeah, it could be mega, mate. That's your end goal. If we get to a big enough level, you would do it. I think you would do it.
I would do it too. Yeah, I would love it. I'm also really good at it.
Obviously, Dor could be a character, and Deagle. We could have all the people in. It would be mega. It would actually be good. Wolf could be in there. We could have all the characters in there. All the LFN crew.
Selling out to the Saudis. Be entertaining
too. Who wouldn't watch that? It'd be fucking fire, wouldn't it? Yeah.
I would love to do that. Someday it'll be a good time. But yeah, anyway, I find the whole thing rather ridiculous. And it's like, I also think it's fine to, make corrections publicly. I think it's an interesting conversation. I think everybody learns more about mechanics of the game when that happens. I don't really have a problem with it.
Also, shout out to Jankos. He could have just said, "You're a fraud. You don't know what you're talking about," and then ignored it. He just cheeks. But by the way, didn't we all learn more about Sejuani by watching that clip? That was quite interesting. Yeah.
So anyway, it was an interesting interaction. Like as usual, Reddit degenerates. Like I don't even know what what tilts me so badly is it's just like, these are the same people who are like, oh, we shouldn't affect people's mental health. We shouldn't be mean to people on the internet. And then they start these massive hate threads. And it's like, oh, somebody I don't like maybe made a mistake, even though they already apologized for it. We must destroy them. It's like, and it becomes
to sound like hyperbole. I actually think Reddit culture, I no longer find it a mystery why like those women in the French Revolution were like knitting while like heads were getting chopped off. Like that seems totally plausible to me, Monty. From what I've seen how humans are on the internet, like they would be doing that. They'd just be like, yeah, he once blocked me on Twitter, head literally cut off in real life. Yeah, you just don't start. Like, fucking hell, you guys are haters.
Well, it's also just, it turns into not just about this issue. It's like, Dom is just so toxic. I'm like, What? Like, have you guys been watching his content? There's really nothing toxic about Dom anymore. Like, he makes some jokes sometimes.
Years ago, yeah. For me, that was more when he was just a streamer, mate. I would actually say, of all the people who do on-camera analysis / like real esports stuff, not just entertainment, I think he's actually one of the most reasonable in the entire scene, Monty. Like, even when he's like jokingly hating on T1, he'll always still credit them if they're good or if they're like an awesome player. Like, I think he's actually one of the most reasonable people.
He's also like unabashedly pro NA. And
of
like,
course. Yeah.
you know, if he was a hater, man, like he would just be hating all over LCS. It's not good League of Legends, guys, but he's always trying to champion the region and he cares about it. He comes from there and he likes the players and he likes LCS. So it's like, I don't even really understand. It's like, he doesn't always shit on people. In fact, he very much, in my opinion, avoids shitting on people.
It also cracks me up because in that thread, people were doing that thing, Monty, where they, again, remember, notice they don't understand the observer effect, Monty. They never include themselves in their critique, and that's what always hoists them on their own petard. So they tried to explain in this thread, that the reason why Dom doesn't know anything, Monty, is he was never actually that good a pro. He was just like a fraud in LCS. He was never a top player. But here's the problem with that logic. If the logic goes, Dom was only an LCS pro and wasn't like a truly great player, so you can't talk to Jankos, then how can a person on Reddit talk to Dom? You weren't even in LCS. It doesn't make sense. Like, by that logic, you aren't even able to like lick his boots. Like, what are you talking about?
These are also, by the way, the same people who are always saying like, well, you know, Kobe and Jat know a lot because they were pros. Guys, they were pros in like the most amateur part of competition.
Bro, I'm just going to let people know this because a lot of people don't know this, and I'm the esports historian. You know that tournament Kobe won? I was there. It was in 2010, Monty. I was in LA at the World Cyber Games. Do you know why I wasn't aware he won that? Because it was a 4-team, I think, invitational tournament of like, it was a fucking joke. Like, I think the teams were like SK, like a German lineup. Like, you probably don't even know any of the players. It might be like one player you know from it. Then there was like Kobe with CLG. Then I think there was like a Vietnamese team or something. And there was like some weird French team or something like. That's the tournament he won. I'm just going to say this now, guys. Like, any ERL is better than that. I'm not even joking. Like that. That's like the most minor achievement for a pro maybe ever. Even Jat, like at least Jat won like what, an IPL or something. That's not bad. That's at least like a proper tournament. Kobe essentially barely was a pro. In fact, the joke is like, no, that's not even a joke to it. It's just fucking nothing. Yeah, the idea like 2010 would be relevant to modern day. It's 2024. It's fucking 4 years later.
I'm not trying to attack their analytic skills. I'm just saying like their pro status is completely irrelevant to their ability to analyze the game.
By the way, the reason why Kobe is a good analyst is this, Monty. He did 14 years of League of Legends. It wasn't that like he played well in a jungle tournament 14 years ago when Thorin was at the LA Convention Center, is it? Like, exactly. I know. And by the way, that's also why the Dom angle is so dumb. Here's why Dom is a mega expert, right? I don't even need to invoke his pro career. He's watched all the best games for the last fucking, 4 years in depth, and then also done content like talk shows and talked with pros. And but the amount of shit information this guy's passed through his brain, it alone makes him better than the majority of us. Like, most of us haven't been able to watch that much League, of course. He's fucking
nobody has. I firmly believe that nobody has watched as much League as Dom has in the last probably 5 years.
I think he'd be number one. Yeah. Because he even does this thing. I'll tell you one thing, but I'll give him his flowers now in a way no one ever does, actually. Do you know what? I've even told people, like, look, I'm ruthless. I told people, like, let's just drop LCS entirely, but it's dog shit to waste your time. Like, why? And, you know, later in your life, you're not going to be glad you did that. Even if you make a little bit of money, you'll spend the money. But with people like Dom, they're so diligent, Monty, that when I would be trying to do, like, Best Damn League Show, and we did it week to week, I would even try telling them, like, can't we just skip this last series? It's shit anyway. And they'd be like, no, I'm doing them all. Like, they just do all the series that day. Like, even though to me, like I say, if it was like UP versus fucking old anyone's edge, I would just skip that game. I'd be like, can we just do the show 2 hours early? But these people are diligent. Like, if they're going to put in the time, do all the matches, yeah. Oh, he's done an insane amount, mate. And then what does he get in return for it? A jealous little bitch on Reddit gets mad that he, who's watched 10 times more League and knows 10 times more, would have a different opinion than them. I've always said this, I'll come back to it again. The worst thing about the Zoomer isn't that he has a different opinion. It's that he assumes if your opinion's different, you must be a moron. Even if, by the way, he himself has no basis to be qualified, you know what I mean? Because I don't get is that. It's what I'm certainly someone who's been anti-authority in my life, especially when I was younger, Monty. But if I see someone who's like mega knowledgeable, like they're a student of the game, they've been around like decades long, I'm always interested in why their take will be different, because I know they must have like a different experience to me. Maybe they saw different players and all that jazz. So I'm always amazed people are so dismissive. Like, if this is why, actually, unfortunately, League doesn't deserve people like Dom. You actually do just deserve cynical dickheads like Doublelift, just going like, hey guys, check out this lane swap, and then you're in the comments going, well, he did show evidence of the lane swap. That's what League deserves. You deserve that, guys. You don't deserve Dom actually trying to figure out some real angle on like whether a team's good or not. Then you tell him, you didn't even win LCS, Dom. Like, what's the relevance? By the way, that's my final point. Hasn't Doublelift's existence proven that winning in League doesn't really make you really smart about the game and give great analytical points? Doublelift won all the LCSs, and this fucking idiot doesn't even know what a lane swap is in games he played in. He was in those games. He still thinks they're a lane swap. Like, what? What a world. I'll never recover from that, mate. That's like my Vietnam. I can't handle it. Because I thought we won 100%, and then people were still arguing. Like, no, we did give evidence. Like, no, get me out. I can't do it. This is wrong. This is wrong.
Well, I think we should probably switch gears here, Thorin, and talk about our sponsor, Into the AM. Into the AM, guys. Quality men's apparel. But both of us are wearing some right now. There you go. They make graphic.
Go with like the scenic looking ones, you know, with trees and some Japanese theme or whatever.
I have
the sort of
dancing skeletons.
Like Day of the Dead or something? Is that like some Mexican Day of the Dead type scenario?
It's like dancing skeletons around a fire. There you go. Anyway, they have graphic tees, but they also have I have a bunch of their unbranded tees as well. They have polos. They have
stuff, yeah.
Yeah, they have bombers. They have like pants for work, like chinos. They've got Henleys. They've got polo shirts. They've got everything you could possibly need as a man. Quality's been very good. A lot of you guys have been posting in the LFN Discord talking about how much you enjoy the products. Thank you very much for ordering. And right now, they have got another massive sale up until July 8th. It's their July 4th sale, so it's going on all this week, guys. And it's 30% off. Plus everything, 30% off everything on the site, plus another 10% off with our code LFN. So you get 40% off in total. So it's a great deal. They do free shipping to a lot of countries around the world. Even if it's not free shipping, they probably ship to your country. They ship to basically every country on earth. So check them out, intotheam.com/LFN. Use the code LFN at checkout. Get your clothes before the 8th of July, where you won't have that 30% discount on everything anymore, but 40% off in total. It's an excellent deal, excellent sale. So head on over. We love their apparel. It's great stuff.
By the way, they also have loads of designs. It's not just going to be like 5 designs for sure. They'll have loads, and they constantly update like the catalogs and go with new collections and stuff. So yeah, if you did it like 6 months ago, if you check out the site, there'll be loads of new stuff you haven't seen.
Yeah, basically all new stuff actually. They cycle stuff very quickly on there, and all the screen printing's done by hand. The screen prints are very good quality. Go through the wash really, really well. Yep. So definitely recommend it. They have what you want. Whether you want something plain, whether you want graphic tees, whether you want jackets, they've got everything. They've got hoodies, sweatpants, whatever you want.
I think we might even do some in the future. I'll tell you off air, but I think we might even do like a mini competition. Like if people send in a picture of them with like a shirt, or maybe like we'll pick a winner and do something cool. You know, we could just do something as a one-off, a bespoke prize for them or something. You know,
it'll be fun. We will. Sounds great. So you want to talk about the end of the LEC splits here with the surprising resurgence of Mad Lions Koi, Vitality and Rogue kissing their seasons goodbye, getting a literally a 6-month vacation.
Yeah, by the way, the joke is they must not know which Riot game they're playing. Is it Valorant or League of Legends Straight Fire? If you know that joke there, by the way, that is absolutely what can happen in Valorant. If you don't know, you can just be done after the regular season. You don't have an international tournament. You're just off for like 6 months. Yeah. So no, that's mad. No, the biggest story here to me goes at this, Monty. Mad Lions was terrible. Everyone knows Rogue's been shit the whole year. The biggest bizarre thing here is the Vitality one, though, bro. Like, Mad Lions just is a bad team. They don't have anywhere to play pretty much. Rogue, the roster's just shit. Vitality, if you just go even now and look at the roster, it doesn't make sense, Monty. It doesn't make sense. Like, this can't be how bad this team is. In fact, you even watch them play as well. They have a similar problem back in the day as the original Carmine Corp did. If you remember when the Carmine Corp roster launched, Monty, they would be in a game. They just could never, ever close out the mid and late game. They would just always lose, no matter what lead they had, no matter how many kills, no matter what lane advantage, they would always throw it away. Like, Vitality is like that, mate. They are, considering they're like a Mac and Pad team, holy fuck is this team's macro bad. Like, it's non-existent. And the worst thing is, like I say, you look at the roster on paper, this should be fire. Like, I think they on paper have some of the best players in the LEC. Like, this is just such a bizarre fucking split, mate. The idea they've bombed already is mental. That's so sad.
It's not just Mac and Pad, by the way. It's also Carter, who I think is a very knowledgeable coach. He was the one who did a lot with no money on Misfits. He was the one who was there during
VTO's old coach.
VTO's, during VTO's MVP split. So he knows players from being on Misfits. But it's like, we got Mac, who we know is good with rookies and is good generally with macro plays, and we got like both Mac and Carter have done things with teams where they were more than the sum of their parts, right? Yes. Or they were hunting down players who were diamonds in the rough, like they were able to identify and hone this talent. And what we're getting now is a roster where there virtually is no macro. And Hylissang is individually performing super bad. And even if we have had this year,
split again.
I mean, like Photon and Carzzy. So Photon's been getting caught out a lot this split.
This is probably his worst split.
Last split, he was super good on an individual level. And then Carzzy has been kind of good the entire time. And so they bring in Lincus, right? And he's a hyped up jungler, but he hasn't been able to gel with this team at all. It's definitely not a VTO meta, but that doesn't really explain how this team could go like 2-7.
Oh no.
It's even more pathetic, Thorin, because they should have beat SK this last week. That game was
absolutely
horrendous. The way they lost that game, they had it
People
all
don't know the only
buttoned
reason Mad Lions got to that tiebreaker is because of that SK win.
Yes,
that miracle.
Yeah, it was an absolute miracle. But it's like they don't even know the most basic way of properly closing out a game. So the team it's just been kind of a disaster, but it's a very, very confusing disaster because you would think, okay, like, sure, anything can happen. Maybe they're not a top team, but surely this is a 50% win team with this coaching staff and these players.
You would think for real, the worst this team could be because of the roster is like, 6th or something. It's inconceivable they could be one of the worst teams. I even think, by the way, this is where I do hate that approach that people love to take in esports, where when someone fails, they retcon that they were always shit. So, bro, they've already done it with Vetio. If you go to the threads about this team failing, there's all people like, I remember when he won that boosted MVP in Misfits. Like, it shouldn't have. Guys, if you never went back, that split was his team being a much worse team, and every time they got to like a late game team fight, him and then Neon also was doing pretty well, to be fair. Him and Neon would just carry the team fight every single time. Like that guy actually, I thought that MVP season, he had some amazing games, mate. Some of those team fight performances, he was really sick. He was like killing everyone. He was really good.
I will say, I do think he was a little bit boosted because that was like the Yuumi OP era, and they were getting a lot of Yuumi, and it was like Yuumi on his Akali. But you do actually have to perform on that.
Yeah, but there was plenty of other teams could have enabled a Yuumi and attached that to their mid laner and carried the game, and I didn't see them fucking do it that split. You know what I mean?
And people didn't ban it against them because they were stupid.
Yeah. Exactly. If it was that easy, that'd be the bad, wouldn't it? Yeah, true.
But
true.
They did get a lot. They were kind of boosted by the Yuumi, and I think that is overlooked. It was overlooked at the time. I was talking about it constantly. Like, why do they keep giving this team Yuumi? They're not even that good. They're just winning because they have Yuumi on VTO's Akali. So anyway, but that aside, he was good during that MVP split. He was able to win MVP on a roster that wasn't even at the top of the table.
No way. Most of those players aren't even in the league anymore, for real. Like, go look at that roster of like A-Rate and fucking half of them aren't in the league anymore. What are we talking about?
So I don't know, man. This Vitality team. My question, Thorin, is Vitality just cursed? Like, are they just cursed? Like, so they go out
in league, doesn't it? Because by the way, dude, this isn't even the first one. They've had a bunch of like super team type lineups that all looked good on paper. Yeah, I'm with you.
I don't even think this is bad GMing. from Vitality, because remember they tried
to sign. I agree.
You know, they tried to take a swing at getting Perks after Cloud9, and like Perks wasn't amazing on Cloud9, but he was very clutch in certain situations. Like Cloud9 never would have won that spring final if Perks wasn't there and Perks wasn't clutch, right? You know, Perks' individual performance wasn't as good as it had been in LEC, but it was still good enough. And if you put the team around him that they had, it just seems extremely weird that they would have such a big downfall. And they've been spending all kinds of money. It's like, well, they got, you know,
some mega. Dude, these players they're signing are all LEC level players. Think about it. They've had like Alfari, Selfmade, Perks, Kazi, Hillersang, Vethio, fucking Forto. These are all mega players. When we talk, these are like, who else do you want them to sign? Even the coaching staff, bro. We all would. Didn't everyone go? That's awesome signing Macapad. LOL. Jokes on you, Mad Lions. Like, that was a mega signing. Like, what do you want?
Yeah.
And we,
I mean, remember, they were the team that brought in Bo as well when Bo was hyped up, and a lot of teams were interested in getting Bo onto the roster.
Yeah, they've had everyone. Yeah, they've had fucking a million good players. Yeah.
So
if you even go back, they had loads of good players. Yeah.
So I don't know. It doesn't even seem like this is a team that has been badly GM'd over the years. It's just that they, for whatever reason, like it just seems like they get super unlucky. And it's not that it's the same coaching staff. It's not anything like that. I mean, the org is relatively well off. You know, I know that they have had a lot of French investors in the past. And so I'm just confused about how they can continue to, I'm sure that's very frustrating for them, but how they can continue to fail despite changing seemingly everything. They haven't had any kind of special loyalty to players or to coaches or to anything. Like they've made very, you would think, savvy changes. It's like, we're not only going to bring VTO, we're going to bring in Carter, who is the guy who worked with VTO to get him to that MVP. It's like it seems like they're trying to make the deep level strategies, deep level connections. They're trying to spend on more robust coaching staffs. Like, I don't really understand, you know, how this could consistently be going so wrong for them. It is very unlucky.
No, I feel for them because, as I say, if you look at the other teams that were contending for those bottom spots, Rogue and Mad Lions are clearly like some weird GMing and some questionable moves, and sometimes you've taken a gamble it hasn't paid off. I'm with you. Like the Vitality one is actually baffling. It's all like it's actually one where, to be fair, maybe in off season we do this. I could see that. That could be like a talk show roundtable discussion there. Like, what do people think the issue was? Because I would love to get a bunch of experts and ask, like, what do you? Because I'm with you. Like, if anything, it's not even like it's one core group. You've pumped this roster full of all LEC talent. It just never somehow comes together. They're never coherent. It's kind of sad.
Yeah. And they had a million times to, like, you know, try and get back into this. They could have just won that game versus SK in the last game of the season. Then they had to play that tiebreaker, which they also lost to MDK. It's like they had a lot of chances not to be in this position, but the level of choke was just unreal. Just unreal.
Here's what I want to know is I want to get your take on this, right? Every time Hillersang has a bad split, the problem is the pro community's take is like, but you don't kick him because what if next split is really good again? That's what they always think, right? Fair. The question becomes like, when does it become diminishing returns, right? Like, would you remove Hillersang if you're Vitality? Yes. Would you keep him?
No, he's been really bad.
You just take it. It's just over the.
He might be good again, but look, I think the issue is I don't know whether Hillersang, if he gets good again in the same environment, right? Or like what causes his ups and downs. He might need a change of environment at this point in time.
Yeah.
So, you know, even if I thought he might be good again, like the question is he going to be good again on Vitality? And I don't know the answer to that, but his performance is really brutal. Bad.
The really brutal thing about this roster as well is when I look at this roster and then you consider all the problems Mad Lions had last year, where apparently they were like losing all their scrims and they're up and down and they're a really weird team. Dude, the craziest turnaround narratively has got to be fucking Kazi. He used to himself be such like an inconsistent player. Dude, I think when you actually look, he's played really fantastically these last 2 years. This guy just turns up and puts in a good performance, seemingly no matter what happens in the game. Like his actual mental must be really good now, mate. He seems like he's really got his head screwed on. Fair play.
Yeah, and he was the AD carry who was Perks' buddy that Perks wanted in the original Vitality team, but he got swapped out for Upset because he wasn't performing up to standard. But I mean, I think you could, in fact, now you're probably not going to because Rahel has been better this split. Like you've had some good AD carries, like Ice has been good, right? But he's certainly among the better AD carries in Europe this year, and he's among the better domestic players as well. So this is, I mean, it's been a really good year for him. I feel bad that he's on this team. Like, he deserves better.
Yes.
I mean, they all deserve better than this. On an individual, it hasn't even necessarily been that big of a problem on an individual level. It's just, besides Hill saying, it wasn't a problem on an individual level. It's just like the level of teamwork and gameplay and macro was so miserable on this Vitality team. So yeah, I don't know. It feels odd. As for Rogue, like, this has just been the slow descent into irrelevancy for this team. I mean, it just feels like Rogue did a good job of like GMing their way to success, but then every move since then has been kind of just a net negative to this team, right? We're not going to walk around and say that, you know, Trimby has been great this split, but I think removing him when they removed him was a bad choice. Removing Odo Amne when they removed him for Shigenda was a bad choice.
The worst thing you've done with Rogue is this, Monty. You've piece by piece, ship of Theseus, removed all the good pieces. And because you've now waited too long, you've even semi-tanked Larson, mate. Like, he was another very consistent floor raiser. He still has some good games, but even he looks like he's been sort of affected by this, mate. He can't just play every game and frag out. Like, I think even everyone's tanked their stock. Like, by the way, not Larson, maybe someone would take him. Like, Comp has no stock whatsoever, mate. No one cares about. These were champions only like 2 years ago. This is ridiculous. I don't think I've ever seen someone progressively take their team down like that, mate. This is really bad GMing. Or some very weird gambles at a minimum, you know.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to say that removing Malrang wasn't the right choice. He went to Brazil and then like flunked out of Brazil. I mean, he's not even on Kaboom Esports anymore.
Malrang, here's what I do, right? I want to take that for a second. It's the same concept that's going on right now in CS2, Monty. We have this guy, Huxley, for G2, who was like the in-game leader of a giant team, and there was always speculation. Is he good enough? Should he be removed? And what used to happen, Monty, was I think sometimes just in response to me being against me, like 90% of takes were contrarian takes, Monty. They're like, no, he shouldn't be removed because he's really good and only like 2 people would be better than him. And then when he gets removed and benched now, Monty, I don't see I'm not joking, not a single person is saying sign him to this other top 10. No one's saying it. Everyone just forgets. So same thing with Malrang. Remember when Malrang was like on top because Rogue were really good? And me and Dob used to get hated on for saying he's just not that good a jungler, guys. If I even used to tell people, I guarantee when he's not on Rogue, a top team, he'll just do the same play on a shit team. He'll just be a bad player. Like, that's why he's irrelevant now, right? I hate it when people do that, Monty, when they go, no, you don't understand, he's really good. Well, then why aren't you all like, where's Malrang? Why weren't you all like, hey, replace Bo with Malrang? Malrang is a champion. Like, because it was a fake opinion, guys. You never really thought these players were good. You just had a weird contrarian take. Because, spoiler, the second Malrang leaves Rogue, there's not a single team you'd sign him for in LEC, mate. Who the fuck wants this guy? As you say, he's just often, his career's going to end in like Brazil, if not maybe he goes
he's
to like
a very
Japan.
weird player, right?
He'll either be in Brazil, Japan, or Vietnam. There's my prediction for the rest of Malrang's career. Enjoy it, mate. Enjoy it. That, to be fair, those are good locations, good weather. You enjoy the weather. So.
I think like in Malrang's case, it's interesting because he did have a very weird style. And I think even Odo Amne on this show said, oh, it's really nice to have a jungler that ganks for you, because he was basically the polar opposite of Inspired. Like, Malrang was the guy who's just going to sit in a brush in your lane, losing all the farm forever in order to maybe get a kill for Odo Amne. And like, there was
a kind of, he'll just drop anything. You tell him to come to the lane, just drops everything, goes straight there immediately, you know, which is the dream for a laner, obviously.
So he was very volatile, and it was hilarious to watch him because there was kind of like a mad scientist genius to his play at times, but other times he would just feed, right? And the rest of the team was like good enough to carry him through. He was definitely an early game focused guy. I mean, hilariously also, he would just buy the item components just to be as strong as possible in the moments of the early game and sacrifice his like late game item builds and item completion breakpoints in order to just like get as much power and as much skirmishing as he get done early. And it was a weird style, and it ended up working for Rogue. But I don't think that keeping him long term was the right answer. But I do struggle to think that, you know, kicking Odo Amne for Shigenda or, you know, getting rid of Trimby was really the right call in this Rogue roster.
Because the saddest thing is now, Rogue has absolutely nothing. Like, They don't even have the identity they had when they were that interesting team that had all those splits in a row and then they won finals to come in. They don't have that. They don't have the same core. They don't even really have an identity. Like, you know what? People meme on all those like newer teams like Mad Lions. At least they've got fans. At least BDS has like a fan base and an identity, you know, like a style. Essentially, unless you're just a Larson fan, what's there left in this team? You know, there's not really anything. Just nothing.
Well,
at this point, they should just join LTS.
They haven't been playing with any kind of, you know, verve or style of their own. They just all seem like they don't want to be there.
As well, they're so fucking boring, mate. It's mad.
Oh, they're terrible. I mean, they never make any kind of aggressive plays. Like Marcoon and Zoelis are not really good enablers for the rest of this roster. So we just end up with
his stock too. He's tanked his stock as well. He used to be considered like a quality player, you know.
Yeah, and Rogue also. You know, everybody had second chances in this last week of competition. You know what I mean? Like, Rogue could have just, I don't know, beaten Mad Lions and then gotten in, and instead they lose, and then they lose again in the tiebreaker, and they lose in a humiliating fashion where, like, Marcoon is missing the Herald onto towers. And, you know, I do wonder how badly some of these teams actually wanted to win versus just, like, get me out of here, Thorin. I want a 6-month vacation, and I'll just get on a different team next year, right? Like, it feels like a lot of these teams just gave up in LEC.
That's also why I hate leagues, though. I'd like it where it's like, because the reason why a tournament format is good, guys, is you're always incentivized to keep going because you're getting a reset between tournaments, don't you? So if you fail this event, then you go back, you practice, you figure out something, you come to the next one and try and frag out, get to the top of the leaderboard there, don't you? So the problem with the splits is I do get the feeling people just give up at the end, especially on this one. Like the problem with someone like Rogue and Vitality is they also sort of know, even if we won, we probably won't go to Worlds. You know what I mean? Like, it's just 3 weeks more of this suffering, you know? It's all like, that's a cynical take, but sadly, I do think some pros think that way.
Yeah. You know, at least Mad Lions, I will say, did have something to play for because of their winter second place performance, right? So, you know, they have enough circuit points that it is actually possible for them to, you know, do a run. So I think they do have that hope going. I mean, it's not because they're bad,
so
but
bad, mate, I know. Bro, I don't want to. Hey, you know what? Everyone's been hating on LEC. Obviously, Dom even says he's going to like quit doing it.
It is really boring.
I can't lie. If Frescovi qualifies for Worlds, maybe we boycott LEC. Maybe we all just quit. Because at that point, what's even the point? You know what I mean? Like, if that's our like third best team, it was old. It's like the old saying, like, last one out, turn the lights off. Just fuck it. It's over. The LEC dream is over. At this point, the joke would be, but here's that. It's a pretty good joke, actually, Monty. In the same way as the NA, eventually, when it got really bad, they had to, you know, take stock of how bad they were and just expand the region to take more talent. So what they did is they became the whole Americas. So maybe Europe could like mix with some other continent. Oh shit, yeah. I'll tell you what, they already did that now. My bad. Because I'm just going to say that. Where are all the Middle Eastern and African players? Get them in there, boys, right? What are we doing?
Now's the time.
I'm almost amazed. This is where, you know, activists are just astroturfed and paid by like think tanks and people like that to do stuff, Monty. You know, if you're an activist, a really great, totally disingenuous angle would be you find out that the region's called Europe, Middle East, and Africa, right? And you just say, this is a racist league. Where are all the African players? And you just do that representation thing, like, because logically you did call that the region. And to be fair, it's what, like 98% European or something like. It's just like a couple of Koreans, isn't it? It's not even anyone who is even African. I don't know. Maybe there's someone.
Not North. So, it would be North African, probably.
Yeah, like, no. So it wouldn't it? But I don't think there's anyone. No, exactly. So all I'm saying is that representation not doing very well on that at the moment, is it? You know,
maybe they'll be like the Americas and they'll just institute slots for African and Middle Eastern teams, Thorin, because they're doing that, right? They're saying in the Northern and Southern Conference of the Americas, there's going to be a Latin American team in both of those ones. So they clearly are trying to like draw the lines here and try and get those LLA teams who they're shafting out of their league into the Americas in some way, shape, or form. So perhaps that is coming. To
be fair, the reason why I do agree with the region, though, is I do think at some point, whether through a roadshow or just banishment, that Rogue should fuck off to Timbuktu, which is in Africa. So I don't know, boom, a joke there, but it's all good.
Thorin, I have something for you that you might find interesting. What if I were to tell you that there is a strong possibility?
Oh God, come on.
That next year in League of Legends, that as we switch to, of course, the 3-split model around the world, that all major regions might only have one stadium final a year.
Fucking hell. So even like LCK is going to be down to one. Oh, that's cancer, mate.
What if I told you that that's a possibility that is being discussed right now?
Here's why I hate that so much. Because, bro, one thing I always appreciate about Koreans is they make every league final a stadium event.
Yep.
Even as I say in the past, if it's just renting a warehouse and putting a bunch of plastic chairs down. One thing I've always appreciated, every OSL, MSL, ASL, all of them, they do like a proper fucking finals thing. So you wouldn't have that for an LCK split is whack, dude.
I was just there at the spring finals that were so fucking good. Remember how everybody was just saying, oh, the production, oh, the stadium. There were like 18,000 people at the Olympics gymnastics stadium.
Looked amazing as well. Looked really good.
It was amazing to be there. I'll just tell you, I was there. It was great. And maybe we don't even get that spring final next year because of the 3-split system. And they're just, they're budget cutting like crazy. And they might just be moving towards the one stadium event a year, which, by the way, Thorin, think about this for a second. When I started casting, before they implemented the league system, when we had the 3 tournaments, champions tournaments a year, we had stadium finals for all of them. We had 3 stadium finals a year. So you are telling me that 10 years ago, an independent company could put together 3 stadium finals a year with less viewership and also not directly run by Riot Games. And OGN themselves publicly stated that only about 50% of their costs were actually covered by Riot, and the other 50% were up to them to figure out in terms of sponsorship to run those events. So you're telling me that with less viewership, because remember, LCK is breaking viewership, all-time viewership records like all the time now. Every split, it's like, here's a new viewership record. Now you're going to tell me that Riot itself can't do 3 stadium finals a year for all 3 splits when it could be done 10 years ago by an independent tournament company. And remember, guys,
ready to get mad? This will make you get mad. I just looked it up because I'm good with memory, obviously, right? Bro, even NLB finals used to be in a stadium.
Yep.
They're like mix
Smaller
of the semi-pro and the low-level. Even those ones used to sometimes be in like a theatre or something like, what the fuck? No, we're just going to have nothing for LCK. How can we have a whole split and it just end in a studio? What is this?
It's just studio finals and LEC shields for everybody, guys.
Fucking hell.
Probably not LPL, but...
Get me out. That's also how insane League is going to get, Monty, because we're going to live in a world where the best regions don't have like a final like that, but then like some fucking ERL or like Turkish League has some like, look at this stadium with 15,000 how have we gotten the incentives wrong again? Like, why is Toby not in the stadium with the fans, not some fucking TCL player? Like, the joke there would be some washed Korean in TCL gets more stage time than Trophy on the best team ever. You know what I mean? Like, what's going on? What are we doing?
I will say I don't think that...
By the way, Monty, doesn't this show some sort of sea change in Riot, though? Because this mixed with the Saudi thing, they're just pulling back on the esports event. They just don't want to spend money on it anymore, right?
Thorin, they're pulling back on everything. And I will say that I don't know if this decision has been finalized yet, but it is definitely getting kicked around. So why I'm saying it is I don't fucking want it to happen, guys. Because it is ridiculous when you can actually fill a nearly 20,000 person stadium for a spring final. That, as far as I'm aware, they've sold out every final ever in the history of LCK. So they sold out all the ones I was there for when we did 3 of them a year. I can tell you guys that much, and that was 10 years ago when the audience was smaller than it was right now. So I don't know. I think I'm disappointed, and I'm really hoping it doesn't happen, because that is one of the core parts of Korean esports, and it's always been what's one of the most exciting things is those big epic finals. But Riot's been cutting the budget everywhere, guys, and you know this because they laid off a fuck ton of people. Hey, Thorin, do you know the new CEO of Riot? Do you know what his former job at Riot was? I'm curious if you actually know this.
No idea. Come on, hit me with it.
CFO of Riot. So turns out they put the finance guy in charge, and then all of a sudden, here come all the layoffs. Here
just crush all the margins, fire everyone. Of course, yeah.
So here comes the former CFO. He's in the CEO position now, and all of a sudden, that's when the layoffs start. That's when we see all the budget cuts to esports. It's only going to get worse, guys. And frankly, like, if you have been around in the scene long enough, you know how this is how esports die, because it just accelerates, the death of the esport, because it all of a sudden people have to believe in the product, because the games are nothing without the packaging that makes the product cool. And if you slowly strip away at all of the production that makes the packaging compelling, that tells the stories, then that's it. Then nobody gives a shit anymore, and your viewership goes into a death spiral. So there you go. It is super disappointing, but I mean that's where we're at, I guess, with the industry right now.
Like at this point, there's like a better chance for League to be epic if we just run like an off-season tournament that's like a show match in a stadium. Like the joke is we might have to save League. Maybe we do through our company. We get funded sometime and just do that.
I mean, the gross thing is, Thorin, is like maybe Carmine Corp is actually better than Riot because they're willing to run off-season tournaments with like T1 and international teams.
And by the way, I'll tell you another thing as well. If Riot's going to do this to the real domestic leagues, then fuck off stopping people like Carmine Corp from running off-season tournaments and exhibition things. Like, just here's a crazy idea. If you yourself can't do it and you're fucking up and you can't invest the money, then get the fuck out the way while someone competent does it. Like, let them actually cook, mate. Like, they actually know how to engage the fan base and get people in a stadium and get them to want to watch the match and buy the... How about learn from them? That's a crazy idea. Like, not everything they've done is negative. Like, I think what they've done with the fan base, look, I don't like the fans, but I tell you what, they've done a very good job engaging them more, mate, and getting and building up that brand loyalty and brand identity. They've done a mega job. That actually is something people should learn from.
Yeah. So, big bummer is what I would say about that. I am desperately hoping that it doesn't come to pass, but let's just say, given all of the budget cuts and the way that Riot's going and the fact that they have this excuse now to kind of, get rid of big...
All right, I've got a solution.
Oh boy, what is it?
All regions finals are held remotely in Riyadh. Deal? Listen, it's a stadium. It is a stadium. We'll just have it's LCK file there. Next week, have the LPL file there. The next week, LEC file there. Yeah, just have them all there.
Same stadium. Everybody from all over the world flies there. I'm sure. I'm sure the Saudis would love that deal. Just everybody goes to Riyadh for it. That's what they want.
What you can do. You can have them all in the same stadium, but then just to like over exaggerate, like it looks different. You can have them like they literally wear like the Korean traditional dress when they come out. Like LEC people just dress. I don't know. Like idiots, basically. Yeah. They just wear traditional gear.
Yeah. Anyway, I have not been happy to hear some of these things. And it makes me sad because I just had such a good time going to a league final, and it made me actually really happy about esports again for a little while, because it was so much fucking fun to go to that, and the match was so epic, and the crowd was so into it, and the production was really good on that final too. And everybody's saying, wow, look at this compared to LEC. This is classic Riot. It's like, look at this compared to LEC and LCK spring finals, both of which were in studios. And of course, Riot doesn't think to themselves, well, how do we make those better? They think, let's destroy that LCK. Let's destroy the Korean thing instead. It's like, those other regions didn't need that, but we should cut this too. That's what we should do.
Yeah, you notice they never do the opposite. Like I say, like just learn from the thing they don't know. Riot's whole thing's like, my fire engine's broken and yours isn't. Give me that here. Now yours is broken too. Well, brilliant. Thanks, Riot. Yeah, cheers.
Their treatment of the Korean scene has been so disingenuous the whole time, because you remember OGN had 100% of the days, and then Riot said, oh, wait, we want to bring in SPO TV because competition will make the broadcast better. That was the logic, right? That having two broadcasters will make them fight. What happened? Oh, they just took it over themselves. Where's their competition now? Oh, I guess the competition isn't necessary to make it better. So why did they give half the broadcast to SPO TV? Why did they kick out OGN? Hey, I thought 3 splits a year of tournaments was a bad idea. Are we just going back to that now? Is that except worse? Because now we don't even have potentially stadium finals for all of them. It's ridiculous. Like, basically, there is a real world where, in spite of significantly increased viewership, that LCK is literally worse next year than it was 10 years ago in terms of hype, production value, formats, tournament circuit, everything. Now, how is that fucking possible? It's just been getting pulled apart over time for no reason.
I also agree with you as well. I don't know how, like, here's the problem. It doesn't make sense to run esports as some sort of luxury entertainment product where actually you were losing money to look awesome and epic and be in stadiums and show off all this like media stuff in order to hope that people would invest in the dream, like you're saying, and build it up and gradually one day move towards profit. It doesn't make sense to then come in and go really cynically, like, right, but manage the budget and really cynically, because then at the end, it's just what you've just said is the factor of how it's going to be bigger, looking bigger. It's going to be the opposite. You're going to shrink, get smaller,
Yes.
it's going to look less serious. And actually, at that point, who is going to invest?
It is the death spiral.
Isn't it just going to die off? Yeah,
Yes.
It's going to die off at that point. Yeah,
it is obviously the death spiral. You know, and perhaps Riot wants it to be that way. They want to push Valorant to whatever new games that they are pushing.
Right.
But you can't really say that this esports stuff is a priority when viewership for international events and everything is up. It's also possible that they just don't give a fuck about domestic leagues anymore and they just want to do more international events, in which case, why couldn't we have done that earlier too? Right? It's just like everything that we've been saying for years was the right path forward, and that they have just finally realized that, but we just lose the best 10 years possibly of this game that we could have had. You know, it never had to be this way. It never, ever, ever had to be this way. And people were telling them it didn't have to be this way. And now we just arrive here because it's desperation time, not because people actually realized that it was, you know, the worst thing for the game the whole time.
Also, just like with LCS and LEC, you're going to end up devaluing some of the championships, because if people remember which years were in the studio, they're not going to be counted as epic anymore. Like, one of the things about LCK, Monty, is like, absolutely that finals environment has stopped people winning before and changed the outcome of the result and made people feel pressure, or sometimes the other way. I mean, sometimes people have risen to the moment and been fucking better than normal. Like, that's what I like about the finals. It has like a magical auric effect on the people playing. You don't want it to just be in the same studio where like the last place teams play their games. Like, that's kind of whack. And also, by the way, it's supposed to also be kind of like a prize for the players as well, to get to play in the finals, like to have that different environment, to see the... By the way, I'm sure if you're a pro who's never been in the finals, just the walkout when they call your name and you get to walk, I bet that's like half the fucking like thrill of it right there. That's something you compete for. You dream of that. You don't dream of just being in the same studio for a match. Like, oh, well, that was the finals. Like, brilliant. We've gone back in esports. Have we regressed? We've regressed 10 years. More than 10 years, to be fair. Like, what next? Do we just buy even more costs to just play it online? Like, what are we going to do next? That'll be the next move for fucking LEC. Yep. Once you play it online, who cares? Yeah.
Yep. No, you're totally right. Well, on that note, Thorin, if you are an LFN fan and you are looking to cut your costs, then may we recommend going to Raycon. Getting some of their everyday earbuds, by the way, especially for the price. The quality is extremely good, right? They cost significantly less than other earbuds. Very nice quality, lots of features. The latest everyday earbuds that they have actually have active noise cancellation built in, so that's a new feature for these, which is nice. You also have the awareness mode, so you can hear on what's going around you, multi-point connectivity, and they're weatherproof and or sweat resistance right now as well. So if you want to take them to the gym, it's a great opportunity to do that. Come in a variety of colors.
Listen to our podcasts while you do
Listen to our podcast while you're at the gym or cooking or whatever it is you're doing. Raycon has you covered. Very reasonable price point, guys, especially for all the features that you get. The features work really well. I've taken them on planes, and it's been very nice to have that noise cancellation. But I also really like the awareness mode so that I can, you know, have conversations or hear people like when I'm cooking in my house. It's been very nice to have that as well, so I can listen to things without bothering people, but still be kind of engaged with my family. So
that is the OP feature, by the way, because I have to say, I'm one of those antisocial people where when I used wired headphones, I would just say, I'm putting headphones in now, which means I'm not going to listen to anything you say, and I'm not even going to look at it. I'm just going to be like, yeah. So I actually do like being able to just do that and not make it not obnoxious. You know, I can do it again. I think it's a pretty good feature. It's pretty good.
So, and like I said, wide variety of colors to fit your stylings. I have the black ones, but they got tons of bright colors as well. So very good stuff, guys. And thank you to Raycon for sponsoring us. You can go to buyraycon.com/LFN today to get 15% off your Raycon order plus free shipping. That's right. You'll get 15% off and free shipping at buyraycon.com/LFN. Buyraycon.com/LFN. It's on your screen right now.
So, to anyone who supported LFN and got themselves some Raycons.
Yep. Best way to support us, guys, through our sponsors like Raycon or Into the AM. who are on this episode, and hopefully you guys get some nice stuff too. We try and pick things and use the products first so that we know you guys will like them and that we legitimately like them as well. So
if only Riot had an awareness mode, Monty, where they could listen to other people interrupting what they were doing. You know, wouldn't that be the dream in many ways? You know?
Well, maybe they're turning on their awareness mode now, Thorin, to a certain degree. But like, wait. We couldn't hear you this whole time. We hadn't had the latest iteration of the everyday earbuds. But now we can listen to the fact that, wait, what is that? You want more international tournaments and less domestic competition? Well, here you go. Oh, you want the Saudis to pay for it? Oh, no, not like that, right? Oh, God damn it. They turned it off again. Too good. I
mean, the joke is at this point in time, like Riot's going to send out Jill Biden to explain what's going on. Half decent joke. It's up there. Hey, good job, LTK. You played all the games and you did get to the end of the season. That's a good thing for everyone. And what did Thorin do? Lie. What a world.
It's the clown political world that we live in now.
Without going into a whole digression, I will say this one, just because obviously we can have our report. That is so fucking weird to me, because when I was young, right, bro, the basic assumption when you watched like a political debate, like the presidential one, was like actually both, like I actually do remember that, like Obama, Romney, both people would be like pretty sharp. They'd be like throwing barbs. Like you could tell that, some of it comes through the earpiece on the lines, but
maybe
some
of
it's like
level of respect for your opponent, some classiness to it.
By the way, that's one thing I actually, for real, as a serious point, because I'm not making it specifically about politics, that both sides do this. That's one thing I think is whack about modern politics. When I grew up as a boy, I actually used to really respect in America that you did kind of like, in British Parliament, you famously can't say like, you're a shithead. You have to go like, the honourable gentleman is right. You have to always treat them with a modicum of like basic dignity, don't you? They used to actually do that in America, guys, for real. Like you wouldn't just say everything the other guy said is a lie. They're all fucking corrupt, evil pieces of shit. Like you would just like battle over policy, for fuck's sake.
I mean, I don't even know how you make fun of that debate, Thorin, because it basically was just satire of itself. Like, I don't understand how you.
It was like an SNL skit. It
was like an SNL skit. It was crazy.
Yeah, like if you'd done that SNL skit 15 years ago, people would just say it's too implausible, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
They'd be like, there's no way it'd be like that. Yeah, you're pushing it too far now. You made it silly at this point, Yeah, exactly. I'm with you.
What a time to be alive. What a time to be alive. I just don't even understand how these could be the choices that it's like, what the hell, man?
That's the clown show.
All right. LPL. Touch on this very briefly while we, we're basically like at the point now where we're going to get into the summer season.
Now's the good time.
Now's the good time. Yes, this is where you want to start actually watching, guys, because LPL is in fact going to start this week. You may not be aware of this, but while the Esports World Cup is going on, there are in fact going to be LPL matches. They're just playing with the teams that aren't there. Or we've got some fucking spicy ones coming up. Anyone's Legends versus FPX. Now that perhaps FPX might be getting back on track after their team troubles, that could be really interesting. In next week, we've got FPX versus JDG. Right. Once we have Top and Esports coming back, they play each other next Friday. So LPL is going to get really good really fast, and you should be paying attention to those Group A matches. Somehow Weibo actually managed to escape into Group A, which is pretty funny after some really terrible games in there. They did, but it only matters that you get there in the end.
Yep,
but
absolutely.
Lots of super good games coming up in LPL, and they are going to be the only league that is active during the Esports World Cup because LCK isn't starting back up until next Wednesday.
I mean, all the other leagues would have a hard time running, but yeah, the LPL just makes you play anyway. And by the way, if you didn't see the last episode, go and check it out. But I essentially bang a line about the Anyone's Legend. One about it looks like the guy's being cooked in a wok. Just look it up. It is one of my best work for a while. Yeah, it's not bad, is it?
The Panda and the Wok logo.
It's the way it looks like the hat's like them crushing the lid down. I can't get past that part. But yeah, obviously Anyone's Legend is in the good group. So watch you see if they're really good now. Let's have a real chance. Let's see.
I'm
I also
really
just love the way this actually looks for real, like a format we would design, Monty. Like, right, spend the first phase, like getting rid of all the shit teams, then we don't have to watch them. And then you can go watch that if you want, but I'm just going to watch Group A. Like, it's like we cynically designed the league ourselves. I love it. I love it, mate.
It's great. So yeah, a lot of the Group A matches, and also it makes it reasonable to watch because they are mercifully doing like a Group B game and then a Group A game every day. So it's basically like, just watch one best of 3 from LPL every day. There's only going to be one relevant one. That's a manageable amount of League of Legends to consume if you're interested in some of these teams and some of these matchups. And it's like going to be a good game every single time, right? The level of competition at the top here is going to be crazy. So
it's amazing, man. Really,
really fun. I think LPL like next season that we're heading into, and you guys should absolutely be paying attention to that.
I think, by the way, that was one of the problems both LPL and LCK had, is that you couldn't really just watch like each day. You had to sort of look on the calendar, like, and almost it's almost like the NFL. You have to just circle the good games and go, right, I'll come back for that one. But I always felt like, because people were used to just watching the whole broadcast, it's true, people didn't really want to watch Thunder Talk versus Rare Atom. You know what I mean? Like, so I get it on that one. So this format, I actually think, could really catch on, because like we say, in the future, you'll just skip straight to this point and just watch Group A and just watch the good games, basically, and then you'll know by the time Worlds comes who's actually good. It'll be easy. Make it easy, mate.
Yeah, if you really didn't have to pay attention to the LPL up at this point, like if you've been watching our shows and heard us talking about it, like that's basically all you need to care about. But the bangers are actually going to start now. So, you know, as fun as it has been with Anyone's Legend and as good as they look, they also didn't have very good competition in their group. So now that we get to see them play against like BLG and Top and JDG, now we're going to really test them and see how good they are. So it should be really fun. LPL.
Also, I have a joke for you. I said it on Twitter, but I'll use it here because it's just a great joke. So the two groups, Monty, obviously they can't cynically call them Group A and Group B, or Group Good and Group Bad. So what they've done is try to make both sound good in their own way. So the good group is called Group Ascend, because you've obviously ascended to the elite level, right? The other group is called Group Nirvana. Well, that's my joke was, it's called Group Nirvana because if you're in that group, you'll want to blow your brains out. Pretty good joke, Ali. Pretty good. Pretty legit.
Making Kurt Cobain suicide jokes, you know? I feel like we're far away from the early 90s now.
Come on. Monty,
like 30 years ago.
It's all good. It's all good. It's all good.
You could have called it Group Samsara too, which is like the wheel of suffering, right? The cycle of death and rebirth.
More LEC, you know, playing in LEC is more because even G2's caught in that nightmare. Like, it never ends every day. I'm still winning all the scrims. Like, can I ever get out? It's like, no, the answer's no. You can't be stuck in that shit.
I do like that they call it Nirvana Ascended.
I know. The worst one as well. The worst group is called Nirvana, Monty. The dream, like, it's supposed to, like, it's so mental. I know.
I guess you just
it's crazy.
I think that it's called Group Nirvana because you actually just have to be enlightened to deal with the emotional situation of being in that group, right? The level of stress. In order to escape the group, you have to actually ascend to Nirvana, where you are untouched by the world around you. That's funny.
I appreciate.
I hadn't realized that before.
Funny. Made me laugh at least. And similarly, by the way, the one thing I will say about that group as well is, dude, could you even have imagined, even a year or two ago, the idea that like EDG and RNG and Team WE, like these legendary brands, they're in the shitter group now. They're the irrelevant teams. Like, holy fuck. That's how wild the LPL is, man. Those are like legacy orgs, so like the greatest orgs of all time. Think about how many championships those orgs have. Like, they have like all the finals, mate. Like, this is mental. That would be like if it currently in G2, that would be like it currently LEC, the bottom 3 teams fighting for that last tiebreaker were like G2, Fnatic, and like, I don't know, who'd the third one even be at this point? I guess it's just those two, right? Yeah. Those two, I guess. SK or something, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, EDG, AG, literal world championship rosters at one point in time.
Oh,
WE also, like, huge legacy with that org. Yeah. Especially international success as well.
All the MSIs. Yeah. It's crazy. These orgs are down there. Yeah.
They haven't been putting a lot of effort in recently, though, so I understand why they're down there. Like, there wasn't an expectation for them, but yeah, on paper, it definitely.
Oh, by the way, one thing I do have to say about the LPL though is it always cracks me up the way it's not until you get into the LPL like season, you'll just be watching a game and you'll be like, "What? What's that Korean player on this team?" Like the one that does that response to me now, Monty, is easily Birdall on LGD. Yes. Like, he's still around. What the fuck? This is almost like when they signed Canada to fucking. It's almost like when they signed Canada to Carmi. Like, these fuckers are around still. Like, holy shit. shit. That's a name I haven't heard like 4 years or something. He's just back. He's just back.
He's back from D+. I mean, D+ just injects their top laners into other regions.
They have sleeper agents like, go and destroy the other region. What the fuck? Because guys, think about it, right? We're all talking about how our current players in the West have to level up and compete with the current absolute cream of the crop Koreans. How are we going to do that with their old cast-offs from 3 or 4 years earlier? Like, spoiler, I'm just going to go ahead and I don't feel like Canada and Birdall are probably going to make an impact on Worlds this year, guys. I don't know about you, but, you know, like, these guys weren't even that good at their pit. Like, at least Canada was all right. Birdall was always a meme, mate. Yeah. He was a meme. He was a meme.
Outside of his Camille. I mean, his Camille was good, and then everything else about him was like too aggressive or, you know, very inconsistent. So not a good player. It is funny that they end up kind of on these mid or lower tier Chinese rosters. I mean, the funnier one too is like UCal, who's been on Thunder Talk.
Oh, and he's been there for ages. Yeah,
UCal actually, on an individual level, has been quite good.
Yeah.
But
he's not a bad player at all. Just
people like forget that he exists.
Dude, he's an LCK champion. Guys, he actually won the LCK, but yeah, he's just actually off slaving away in some fucking team you'll never give a fuck about because they're just like mid-table forever, basically.
I did watch some Thunder Talk just because UCal is like this year has been pretty good. So, and last year too. But yeah, it's been funny to like see some of the middling, you know, Koreans just kind of collecting their paychecks on this team. Otherwise, LCK, you find anything interesting about D+, considering that they're in second place in LCK somehow right now?
Like I told you, mate, go back a couple of episodes. Like, they're actually like the sleeper this split. It's wild, isn't it? Like, if you look, like, first of all, this is like a Showmaker renaissance. He's having some really good games.
Lucid's also been playing really well.
Yeah, the problem was everyone for some reason bailed on the team after that split. That was the Lucid guy's rookie split, guys. Like, he's a player who clearly had like talent. And I actually grew that promotion. If you're going to lose Canyon, great time to gamble on like a rookie talent that's. By the way, he looks like he has a real future. Like, it's not a bad team.
Well, he was also like the most hyped player coming out of Tier 2 in Korea. So, I mean, it was about living up to those expectations.
Obviously not this. You don't expect him to be second, but like, yeah, it's better than you think. It's better than you think, man.
Part of it.
And I've always been a naming fan personally. I mean, we talked about it in the last episode. I've always just liked that guy. I've always thought he was good.
So part of it has been strength of schedule, and part of it has been that, yes, they're 5-1 in matches, but a lot of their actual series have been close. Like, they did drop games to like Hanwha, KT, and Kwangdong, which have been their harder opponents, and they did lose to T1, and they lost very convincingly to T1 as well. Those games were not close, but I think a lot of that was really some very bad drafting strategy going in, where it's like, we're gonna first pick Nidalee and then not set up the Nidalee, and then Lucid looks bad. So I really liked how they bounced back this past week, and the Kwangdong victory I think was very meaningful for them, and was really quite fun to watch. They did some really interesting things, like we got to see Showmaker have the Twisted Fate flexed into him. So they picked the Twisted Fate early, baited out the Jax pick and topside, and then played Kingan's Gragas into it, which, you know, Kingan is a classic Gragas player. It's like Gragas is, you know, when you think about Kingan, we think about like Ornn and Gragas and some of these Aatrox, you know, champions that he's typically been associated with. So I think they did some really cool stuff in the draft to like bait picks out, and Showmaker got to play Twisted Fate, which is obviously one of, if not his most signature champion. Aiming's back on the Zeri, feels like a very good meta for aiming overall. Lucid on the Vi, like Lucid has been performing. I mean, he's basically locked in to be Rookie of the Year, I think, for LCK, because Perfect is ineligible because he played one game last year, and if you play one game in LCK, you are no longer eligible to be Rookie, which is crazy. You should have to play a few more games, in my opinion. But that's how it goes. And Kingan actually had a really good series overall against Kwangdong. So D+, do they still have like late game shot calling flaws? Sure. But they have pretty good champion pool diversity right now. The meta seems to be like working out for them in certain ways. Is aiming probably still too high of a resource AD carry who occasionally throws games? Yes. Is Kingan
Yeah, but you got to live and die off that. You got to take.
You do.
Upside,
I mean,
he's
a funny player because you know he's going to take all of the farm and then he might just throw the entire game. But he also has some really impressive carry performances at times. So he's got to take the good with the bad with aiming. But Lucid, you know, the thing that's most impressed me about this split has been Showmaker and Lucid synergy has gotten so much better. So much better. Especially off of engages. You go, if you want some proof of this, like go look at that Guangdong Freaks series they played. Like they got the Vi Talia combo a couple times. It worked really well. Vi Twisted Fate. It was really nice to watch. So shout out to D+. They're actually becoming one of the more fun teams to check out in the LCK. And unlike last split, look, Genji's going to win this split, guys. But the middle of the pack is actually kind of interesting in the LCK because T1 is less strong than people thought. Hanwha's been waffling a little bit with Doran. Guangdong is like surprisingly good, even though I think Guangdong are kind of patch zergs that are relying on Bulldog playing Tristana and Corki, and they look a lot worse when he's not on those champions. So I'm not as, in spite of their record, I'm not as high on Guangdong as I was last split at times. But Leaper looks like a pretty legit player and a very surprising one to come out from being like a streamer and content creator. And D+ like has gotten better. So I think KT looks intriguing. It looks intriguing, or I mean, LCK looks intriguing right now. KT does not look intriguing. Outside of that win versus T1 that we discussed earlier. But it is LCK can frequently be boring in the regular season, so it's nice to see it have a little bit more life, at least through the first 3 weeks of competition this time around.
And also, anytime a great player like Showmaker just has relevance again and like can actually do something, I'm always interested. Like that's one thing I think is that you should never just dismiss the legendary players. Like Showmaker wasn't even that bad the last few years. It's just like his teams were dodgy, and then he had the odd times where it wasn't as strong a player. Like I always thought he got a little bit overrated at his peak, but then he got underrated when D+ was bad. Like this guy's still clearly a top talent. Like he can carry the fuck out of a game still.
Oh yeah. And you know, we get to see D+ actually play Gen G this next week, which should be really fun. Don't expect D+ to win that, but you know, Gen G probably going to be tired off of the trip to Saudi Arabia, so you never know what's going to happen. Luckily, Gen G has until next Saturday to recover from that. But Gen G also has to play Guangdong on Thursday, which is sooner, so it's a tough week for Gen G, and they are going to be, you know, maybe not in the best condition.
I did reference this last week, but that's also the factor I think people are, because it's been so long since we had the IMs. I think people are going to forget that, like, because everyone does the boot camps before the international tournaments. Normally, jet lag doesn't affect international tournaments in league. It's going to affect the Esports World Cup, mate. Like, think about coming from like LA to fucking Saudi Arabia and just play like 2 days later or something, or a day and a half later. Like, what? Yeah, it's going to affect people, mate.
So from Korea, it's only a 6-hour time difference, actually.
All right,
Saudi is 6 hours earlier. From Europe, it's actually only 1 hour ahead of Berlin. So like the Europeans are not going to have any problems.
It's part of our region, so yeah, makes sense.
Like part of our region, only an hour time difference. You knew?
Yeah, it's our region.
So you know, but from Korea time, it's not too bad, and China's an hour before Korea, so it'll be what, 5 hours from China Standard Time. So it's like, it's actually not too bad. The worst reach is going to be used for NA. That's going to be the shittiest one for jet lag. But Europe, it's nothing, and then Asia, it's not. It's medium bad. But it should be relatively easy to recover from a 6-hour time difference. It's not the most brutal thing in the world. Any other topics you want to hit? You want to talk about LCS at all? Is it even interesting? Dignitas losing the FlyQuest.
I thought it was funny. I will say it was funny. Obviously, the sad thing about that was the fanfare for the game was awesome.
I know, it's great.
But then the problem is the game didn't live up to it, did it? You needed the game to be better to like really fucking put you over the top, didn't you?
I think it was like the fastest 4 games ever played in LCS history or something like that day, because I mean both of those games are like 24 minutes long. I mean, if you are a FlyQuest fan and you see that and they're heading into the Esports World Cup, maybe you're encouraged. Inspired did look better on the Karthus than when he was refusing to actually flash in or die in previous Karthus games that he's played. Busio looked a lot better. He's been, Busio, obviously, like, I have been very critical of him in playoffs and at MSI when he performed really quite badly. And he's been uneven. Like, he's definitely had some kind of lackluster game this split, but this last week was good. Honestly, the first week of competition where he was playing the Ornn, I thought he played very well. So there have been, I would say, a few more bright spots to Busio's play, but it's, again, when you hit these international tournaments that it's very hard to believe in the Busio and Masu lane, because they literally make decisions like in probably 33% of their games that just like make the game super hard for their entire team. And you can kind of squeak by occasionally at LCS, and like Inspired and Bwipo have been able to recover. But at an international level is just going to be lights out. Right. And I guess it's a good time for development of Quad. Quad has been looking better to his credit as well. I think he started looking pretty like a non-factor basically, but he's been growing his claws over time. So FlyQuest, I think, at least can enter into these playoffs, or this international tournament, with a little bit of momentum behind them, which is nice. But I think ultimately,
I don't even think
G2 is going to be too hard.
My take on FlyQuest is this. I don't think Quad even has to be as good as Jensen was. I actually think the premise goes, you remember that year when Perks joined Cloud9? Sure. And then even though it had nothing to do with him, they were just like, right, Sven, you have to go to Academy. It's like, what? And the premise was they couldn't have both Sven and Perks in review because they just argue too much. So it's like, take one of them out the room and just have the other one sort of lead the discussion, right? My theory on why Quad might be a positive addition to this team is, even though obviously I do think it wasn't a big deal that they had like that abrasive style between Jensen, Inspired, and Bwipo, you have just removed one ego from the room, though. I imagine the Quad guy just sits there and plays League of Legends. Like, then it's just Inspired and Bwipo for so it can sometimes help to just remove an ego from the room,
Sure.
That works. Sometimes you can essentially add by subtraction, as it were.
I mean, somebody's going to fall in line with the way that Inspired and Bwipo want to run the team, right?
Whereas you have to realize Jensen essentially is, for good or for ill, and his problem is he's at his peak now, he's a very stubborn player who's basically played however he wanted for like 7 years now. And that was cool when you win all the championships, they'll let you do that, mate. But I'll tell you what, and sadly, a lot of the players I like are like this, Ronaldo, Aaron Rodgers. The problem is, though, if people perceive your game to not be as strong, they're not going to put up with that as much. So if you want to be a bit of a diva, you've got to fucking back it up is the problem.
Right.
Or just go to Dignitas. Just go play Dignitas. Go get that easy retirement check. Diglingtons.
I credit to the hype around that match though. Like the teams really are like leading into it. It was fun to watch the lead into that.
The Twitter shit. You could believe from Twitter that was like G2 Fnatic, like the fucking social media accounts were doing a good job. I thought it was well set up. Yeah.
I mean, nobody from Dignitas has ever done anything remotely hype before ever in the history of this org since they joined the LCS. So obviously,
the last guy to do anything entertaining in Dignitas was I'm a Cutie Pie about 10 years ago. You know what I mean? That was about the last guy that was anyone give a fuck about that org, mate.
So credit to Dignitas. They're actually trying for the fucking first time in a long time.
No, they have turned that brand. By the way, even the players they've signed, dude, I'm a fan of this lineup. Why wouldn't I be? These are players I enjoy watching in LCS for many years. And they're spicy. They're actually going to trash talk. That's dope.
The interviews they've been doing have been very good too. Sven is great.
You can have all sorts of back and forth. It's going to be fun. And also think about all the rivalries you can do. You can do Speaker against Blabber again. You can do all the classic Jensen against FlyQuest itself. There's so many angles you can do on this one.
I mean, Sven against Cloud9 is going to be a great one too. So there's lots of different angles you could take. So I hope Dignitas continues to lean into it. And also the nice thing is that all these players are, veterans and big boys. So they're not going to be slowed down by a few of these losses. I mean, yeah, the FlyQuest loss probably sucked a lot, especially in the way that they lost. But I don't think it's going to trip them up when it comes to providing some spice and interest to LCS moving forward. But I like the direction they're going in. Like, I think that it feels much more fun to watch because of the way that the league is handling content and the teams are buying into it and the players are buying into it, most importantly. So I really enjoy that. Otherwise, though, I would just have to trash talk 100 Thieves because I think they're just absolutely garbage as a team.
They're garbage, man. Bearing in mind, Dignitas is better. Like, dude, if you just look like they're not even going to. They're going to be like what, last place, and like first rounded in the playoffs or something. This seems not good. They're not going to do. They can't do anything.
They have no coordination. They have no teamwork. They have no macro. They don't know how to use teleport from their top laner. There's really nothing to like. Like they were winning in spring off of the strength of some of their like laning phases and getting kills in laning phase and being able to snowball that. But my God, they have no idea how to play the map right now. And, you know, I honestly feel bad because I think River is the one who's most elo held on this team. And he just can't do anything with these players. Like, you know, when are we? I asked Dom on Power Spike, I'm like, at what point is Sniper, like, when is it unforgivable that he doesn't know how to use teleport? Like, when is that line being crossed? You know what I mean? Because it's already been crossed for me. Like, you need to. I feel
like I got tricked by that guy though, dude. Because actually, initially, he did look really promising when he first came in, and he had all those really interesting games. It was like, oh, this is like an interesting pickup. But yeah, he's just hit a ceiling, hasn't he? And he can't go past it.
Well, his mechanics are good, and like he does draw bans from certain champion picks that he has, and he has been very successful in lane. But that will only get you so far as people catch on to your play style and can, you know, manipulate the draft against you. And if you're in a meta where it's Cassante Skarner time, and maybe those opportunities for solo kills are fewer and farther between, but you have to be able to team play. You have to be able to teleport flank. You have to be there for objectives and understand how to play side lanes. And it's like, he's not there yet. And maybe he'll never be there. Right. But, you know, I think it's rough for 100 Thieves right now because just as a whole, these guys just feel like they lack an extreme amount of in-game shot calling and macro knowledge. And, you know, now that people know, I mean, I think it's ridiculous that Quid was MVP of spring, personally. I think like it's outrageous like that Inspire didn't get that.
No, it should have been. He won the game, yeah.
But Quid, everybody was so high on Quid because he was good at Talia, basically. But I mean, he had a pop-off Ezreal game to start things off, but he hasn't been super remarkable outside of that, and he's not providing any kind of leadership that this team needs in game. So, I don't know. I'm so frustrated watching 100 Thieves. I mean, 100 Thieves and NRG are both miserable watches at this point in time.
Oh, no, I'm with you. Like, bearing in mind, I told you, so many players told me that River is just like the ultimate NA jungler, like, as in LCS region. Like, he's so smart, he knows everything in the game. How was this team this bad then? Like, you're not utilizing this player. And also, the immediate thing I look at there is like their coaching staff is Golden Glue and Spooks. Like, where are all the big coaches? Like, at least like before you used to have Nuke Talk. Nuke Talk knows all about fucking macro, like game setup and lane assignments. So like you got to have people who fix the problem too. Like either the roster's too shit or the coaching staff isn't good enough. It's one of the other, or a little of column A, a little of column B. One of those three.
Well, they have a lot of, you know, newer players too, which probably isn't helping, right? But
wait a minute. I was told what NA fans want is to develop domestic. By the way, the reason why I'll never understand that argument is, what are you talking about? We watch to watch the best players, not to watch someone who isn't good yet developing as someone good. Like that's such a fake storyline, bro. Like I've always said this. Like the reason why I would have watched like Soaz play at the end of his career over some up and coming rookie is I don't even know if the rookie's good yet. Why am I watching? I'm watching Soaz because of who Soaz is. You know what I mean? Like I always thought that like the rookie angle is just whack, mate. Like you don't even need to have rookies. There's loads of talent. Think about all the players that didn't even get until this split, like Licorice, etc. Like all those fucking dig players. You could have had them on your team, you morons. You were just sitting there. Let's roll the dice on Quid and Sniper. Like, whatever. Well, enjoy the results. Enjoy the results.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm tired of watching him.
Here's the shit joke. Here's the shit joke I would tell Quid, since he was in theory the one good player. I would go, well, you know what? Quid, in for a penny, in for a pound. Whatever. Because his name's Quid.
Quid, yes. I get it.
All good. It's all good. They can't all hit. Looks like 100 Thieves, actually. This team's going to do nothing, though, because the biggest problem they have, Monty, is actually Dignitas making a better roster. Like, because you look at the teams, like, they might not even be in contention for the last world spot. Like, the three main teams are pretty good, and then you've got Dig outside that. Like, they're gonna, and then NRG, if they ever got half decent, would do something like 100 Thieves is in really bad shape, man. Like, surely they're trending for like a 7th place or something stupid like that.
Yeah, probably 6th, because I think Immortals and Shopify are worse, but I don't know. Like, at least NRG has a ceiling that should theoretically exist. I don't think they're going to get back up there, but it does feel, you know, when we're talking about 3 spots for Worlds and C9, TL, FlyQuest, and Dignitas are all quite clearly better than 100 Thieves, I don't know how they're going to, you know, deal with that. I mean, they already lost. They beat NRG, I guess, but that was in week 1, and I don't read too much into week 1 performances. But they turned around, lost to Dig, lost to Team Liquid. They play Cloud9 next week, so, or probably, you know, 1-3 by the time. And sure, their schedule has been front loaded a little bit. Like, they actually play Immortals and Shopify at the very last 2 weeks of the regular season, so it's a chance to kind of bounce back. But you know, Cloud9 FlyQuest next week, so they could be just like 1-4. So maybe if they win against both Shopify and Immortals, they get to like 3-4. That's probably their best case scenario.
Also, I'll just put this out there. Like, the other thing that I can't handle about this fucking team, NRG, is, remember, even the narrative reason given for the sleeper reason why they got good and won LCS and beat G2 at Worlds was that they had like 7 coaching staff members or something, Monty, and then they had to cut off them immediately afterwards. Like, spoiler, you all saw from that show before MSI, DeMonte used to be on their team. He was like their performance. He's on fucking FlyQuest now. Like, their whole thing that they built up doesn't even exist anymore. Yeah, they had to like slash a bunch of the people, didn't they? Like, that was an interesting approach. People don't know they had positional coaches for like everyone, basically. And so actually, and it looked like they were doing a good job with it. They sort of figured out a system and people bought in and they had delegation. Like, that was a very interesting approach. So they've also sort of killed that narrative because it's just not true anymore. It's just now sort of the players have to play again. That's it. Sad.
Well, I think that'll do it for our LCS conversation. I think we take some viewer questions now. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will do viewer questions for you. See you there.
Right, we're going to do the viewer questions. How do you ask a question? Said the viewer. Well, obviously, it's not literally that if you're viewing it now, it's that people who support LFN can ask questions. So to support LFN, you can subscribe to our Discord, the Last Free Nation Discord. And then once you do, there is an appropriate channel to ask questions from. And actually, I think we've actually got through all the questions the last few weeks.
Didn't quite get through them all last week, but most of them, almost all of them. But yeah, we're pretty good. All right. Have you ever watched any of the films covered on Foreplay on a plane before? Almost certainly, but not in preparation for the show. If so, how was your experience of them? What are your opinions on watching films on planes in general? So actually, when I knew we were going to do our Paul Thomas Anderson arc, I did watch Licorice Pizza on my plane ride back from the States to Korea, which isn't in our arc, but is Paul Thomas Anderson's newest movie, because I had, you know, time on a plane where I was going to be able to watch it. Obviously, the experience isn't great, guys. They're often edited, you know, differently because they don't want them to be too violent or sexual on planes if you're watching them yourself. So what, you know, usually what I've been doing recently is just like watching old James Bond movies on the planes, or like I rewatch some classics or movies that I've already seen to refresh them in my memory. But I mean, the experience hasn't been great. And no, I would not watch one on a plane to get ready for the show. Right.
Yeah, to me in general, because obviously I used to, when I did a lot of CS events, do a lot of flights. And in fact, when I used to live in Korea, I used to do like 1 million long hauls. Generally, I just use, like, first of all, movie isn't my go-to thing on a plane, Monty. Like, what I try to do is, over time, I've learned out my meta of how to use a long haul flight. Is like, I do it how much energy you have. So what I try to do is I try to do the energy intensive things first, like read a book that you actually, like a serious fiction book. You know, I'll start with that.
That's true.
And then I'll move on to, like, you know, maybe when I'm getting a little bit more tired, but I can't go to sleep yet, I'll watch the movie. That at the end, maybe if I'm just like wasting time, I'll watch like a throwaway TV episode that I can even fall asleep in and who gives a shit, you know. So even when it comes to movies, I'm never, put it this way, I would never in a million years watch like There Will Be Blood on a fucking plane. Like that's a movie you need to actually like draw the curtain, sit down, have no you know. So I'm like I always say on past episodes, I watch stuff like throwaway stupid superhero movies that I never got round to. Some of that I don't
like
care.
I said, like, I watch
crying, all the food.
I'll watch like a fucking Roger Moore James Bond movie. You know what I mean? Like whatever.
But the problem is, like, I will say one thing that did improve massively over when I first started going on flights, though, is that, like, obviously back in the day, you had to only ever use those really shitty airline headphones, which also ruined the movie. In the modern day, I will say, if you have like proper headphones and noise cancelling, that will make it 100 times better. Yeah, exactly. That does make it a lot better. So, like, but even so, like, that's also why I wouldn't watch a really good movie though, because like the distractions are going to be insane. Like, remember the person's come with the food car, and then someone's like, "Excuse me, can I get up for the time?" Like, you're in the middle of the movie. Like, you don't want that. Like, so for me, I would just never waste a good movie on it. Put it
yeah. I also like play Switch games a lot on planes now too. Instead, so. All right, next. Orson Welles once said, "The more virgin our eyes, the more we have to say," and that is the most detestable habit in modern, and that the most detestable habit in modern cinema is homage. Do you believe seeing too many paintings is the biggest flaw of modern art? These artists might have seen more paintings depicting falling leaves in autumn than have actually seen them in real life. I'm not sure what the last part is about. So Orson Welles once said, "The more virgin our eyes, the more we have to say." I mean, that's true, right? Because you're not going to comment on things that you've seen many times before. And the most detestable habit in modern cinema is homage.
I mean, I also take it that he's sort of implying like people get caught in a rut of just copying or like doing something similar to other people. Whereas the idea is if you came fresh, you would just have whatever your authentic experience is. But I think there's some truth to that, as in, it's why, even though I do think people push it too far, you know why almost every musician who's a great musician, Monty, does that lie where they go, "I'm not influenced by other people." It's like, well, you obviously are. No one can choose that. But that's sort of what I think they're trying to mean, which is they're still trying to tap into their own voice and not be like, they just mean they're not unduly influenced in like a way where they're just copying, you know. So I sort of see what he means by that.
A couple of weeks ago, you spoke on the potential of Doublelift going into the League Hall of Fame. I raised the question that since his MSI final was brought up, where does someone like Sneaky match up in this debate? Not anywhere close. All right. As according to Riot, Worlds is more important, and Sneaky is one of the greatest performing NA players at Worlds. I mean, sort of. He did go to semis. That's true. So, and he did pull the one and only.
The framing there. The framing was like, again, you are like the prettiest waitress at Denny's. Like, one of the best performing players. Oh, wow, Worlds of NA. Like, well, there we go. You've already cut the legs out from under the years because there's barely anyone, isn't there? So,
yeah,
I just don't. You know, I'll never understand this player, matey. Are you ready for the insult right now? Because if you actually know their careers in esports, this isn't an insult. But to Amora, it's an insult. Here's why I don't really care, Monty. Because Sneaky was fucking NA bang. There you go. How you like them apples? By the way, both won championships. You know, a successful career. But they just weren't Uzi eye, were they? They weren't Uzi eye and Doublelift. Just fucking grow up, kids. Grow up.
All right.
They're good players.
One. It's time. Chovy is the LCK GOAT. I think Chovy has a lot of catching up to do on the international stage, but he's the best player in LCK history. I do hold against Faker all of this inting and griefing. I hold it against Faker these recent finals losses, since I think if Chovy was on T1, T1 wins each of the last 4 titles. That is an interesting thought experiment.
The problem with that one, obviously, is, yeah, in terms of mid laner, but then what would the effect be on the team? Like, would Chovy back last year have been as good as Faker as a shock? Obviously, I know what he means. It's not a bad one, but it's a bit trickier, obviously, you know, team dynamics.
So anyway,
he's trying to show he's not a hater, basically.
Yeah, basically, Chovy has never been benched and has never had a champion pool problem in 7 years. That is true. 2024 Chovy, I think, has reached the highest level of play I've ever seen. I think that's also probably true. He probably is like the highest performing individual player. Yeah. He's certainly the highest performing individual player right now, even if I would not say he is currently the front runner for MVP of the league, but that's because it's probably Canyon, and they're definitely like leaning into Canyon's strengths right now. And he's taking a backseat in terms of priority on the team to Canyon for the meta reasons, which is fine. So right now, I think the MVP is Canyon, but you know, if the meta shifts, Chovy could easily take that over again. But I look, man, Chovy is very good. So do we think Chovy is the LCK GOAT? I think he might have a claim on it after this year. I mean, the international performances are concerning for him, and I think that's where he falls short of Faker. I also think that people don't remember Faker's peaks. You know, the first like 3 years of Faker were fucking amazing, guys. Like, really incredible how much better he was than the next best mid laner, and how he would just completely take over finals. You know what I mean? He had insane clutch, insane risk taking, balls to pull out new champions. Like, he was incredibly exciting. Chovy,
I
I will
once
say,
made a video along those lines, Monty. It was actually for Deserto like 3 or 4 years back when I was working with them. I made a video where the premise was Faker's would-be rivals. You can probably look it up on YouTube right now. And what I pointed out, Monty, was that until basically Rookie, who then just never got to play him, like he never had a rival. It went like this, Monty. Like in the early days, it was like what? Dade into fucking Ryu, into Pawn, into keep going. Like just fucking, the point is every year or two, there was another mid laner that was his rival, but then Faker just prevailed, and like he was the one constant, and then they were all getting cycled in and out. Like Rookie was there briefly with OPL. Every year or two, someone else came along. He was the only person. He was just the protagonist of the LCK, wasn't he?
Right, and I think like Faker, Chovy has never been as exciting as Faker has been, and I think that's what. Like, just from a pure entertainment perspective, the peak of Faker is more entertaining and spectacular than the peak of Chovy.
Sure.
What's crazy about Chovy is just his consistency, right? And the
Well,
incremental advantages
really
that
does.
yeah, he's like he's the innovation of League of Legends, right?
Here's the difference. Faker actually did just play like a genius. He just did moves that no one understood. He had the capacity to do everything no one could even imagine. Chovy is just like the greatest robot ever. That's how I feel. Like he just does everything correct, and it's the flaw of his game that's impossible too. Like he just, like you say, he never would be benched because there's probably the most unbenchable player in the history of League of Legends. He's just too good, isn't he? Like he'll never be bad and cost you the game. Like, you might make a mistake, but yeah, no, I think the flaw is crazy, mate. That's underrated, I think.
I'm curious about the phenomenon of players being really good at only AD or AP champs. It feels strange that this is such an impactful factor when they're even within these categories, champs differ a lot, such as Sejuani versus Karthus. Do you think there's an element of mental block or players convincing themselves that they are one or the other, or maybe not putting enough effort into being more versatile?
Okay, I've got an angle for you, Monty. Here's a quick angle I'll hit you with, because here's one thing I am sick and tired of. You know, I always get really mad when people say, like, why? He's a professional. Why can't he play that champion? Like, no, you have to play that champion against Faker, not just play the champion. So I'm going to do the same thing. You know how on Reddit you all think you can play these champions? You can't play any of these champions in this discussion, because the champion you think in solo queue, all you do is this. What happens when you play against the absolute best Koreans who know exactly how to neutralize that champion? What about when you're the Nidalee in a team fight and you go in and all the fucking CC just goes right on your bitch ass instantly? That'll never happen to you in your fucking gold solo queue games. So you think you know what Nidalee does. You have no idea what that champion's like in an actual pro game. So the other thing I will just shade in here is, like, when we say they can only play AD, we mean at the highest level. We do mean you have to be really, really fucking good. So I also think as well, isn't this problem logically only going to exacerbate? Like, as you get to like 200 champions one day, it's going to be impossible to be good at as many as people want you to be at.
He's also asking about different categories like AP versus AP champs, but I don't think we would put Sejuani and Karthus, your examples, in the same bucket, because, you know, if we're talking about junglers, we would say like, well, Sejuani is more of a tank engage jungler, and that's a different skill set than a farming AP carry jungler, right? Yeah, I mean, yes, they're both AP.
When I think AP fucking farming, you know what I mean? Like something like that.
Yeah,
you know?
So I think it's just different, and like people have different skill sets. At least with AD versus AP mids, for example, a lot of mids aren't trained to like auto attack or be in those ranges. They're there to dump cooldowns, to play around cooldown timings and weave in and out of fights when those cooldowns are up, right? It's a different skill set, and Riot designs these champions differently to be based around that. Like, you can only have so much power in AD carries because a lot of their power just comes from stat stick items and auto attacking, and that has to be part of the skill set. So it really is just different mechanical skill sets, different mindset skill sets. So I don't think it's, I mean, I think it's hard to play that many champions well, and it's hard to play that many different kinds of champions well, which is also why it's so crazy that jungle keeps changing in League of Legends constantly, because junglers have to play all of the champions. Fucking nuts.
I'll also say this as well, because I do get sick and tired of team games talked about like they're 1v1, right? Are you ready, Monty? If Chovy last year isn't counted as being good enough at Worlds, by the way, I thought he was brilliant at Worlds. Go watch the games again. He did really well. It was his teammates that let him down. Then why does you know what? By that logic, Monty, if Chovy sucked at Worlds, then are you ready for a statement? Faker didn't win Worlds. Now, I know you're already going to go, what do you mean? Faker was not the best player on that team, so why does he get to say, I won Worlds and I didn't choke? But Chovy, the best player on his team who was let down by his teammates, he didn't win because he didn't get the trophy at the end. What are we even discussing? If it's about being the GOAT, it only counts when you're the best and you win. So that last Worlds doesn't even count for Faker. Spoiler. Yeah, you like that, do you, guys? So there's certainly years. You go back a few years, I'll blame Chovy all day long. Not this last one. He didn't do anything.
No, he was actually
World.
fine this last World.
He was great.
Yeah, and I think that's the narrative that's also been lost for Chovy is like he has been incrementally been getting better at internationals.
They talk like he just gets to every international tournament and shoots the bed completely like a bomb. Like, have you been watching these games?
By the way, Chovy has never been in conversation for a Dade Award winner, guys. That should tell you what you need to know.
Never.
So he's never been part of that conversation.
Yes.
I feel like as I learn new information, my brain deletes old information. Well, that is, in fact, what your brain does. So, yes. Do you feel like this happens to you, or do you feel like your hard drive has more space than the average person? I mean, my hard drive definitely has more space. But, yes, I mean, it deletes things over time as I learn more and get additional skills and change what I use actively day to day. You know? I don't remember everything that I would have known 10 years ago when I had a different set of interests and lifestyle stuff. Like, obviously, you know, as a parent now, I've had to learn a lot more about that. And that has caused, you know, me to forget other things that are no longer relevant to my life. So I think that's pretty normal.
I'll tell you one thing that pisses me off, Monty, is when people even talk about the idea of like here's what's so whack. Even people who think me and Dom are dismissive, you know, we're being way too generous with them in the discussion by allowing them in the discussion. Because what we act like is this, Monty. We all accept the premise for the sake of not being a shitheel that when a fan says, no, that isn't what happened to Chovy, this happened. We literally make the assumption, Monty, for the sake of honest debate, that person, one, didn't just watch the game, but isn't an idiot and had the basic skill set to understand what they were watching. We actually grant them way more generosity than they ever deserve, considering what they do to people like me, you, and Dom, right? Meanwhile, I would say this. Think about how many times we're having a discussion about like historical players, and we're saying something like, well, actually, you know, in season 6, Uzi I wasn't that good. And a fan goes, you're wrong. He was the best. Bro, for all we know, that guy was 14 when he was watching him back then. He was a 14-year-old kid just watching a game after school, eating Cheetos. Like, I'm supposed to give a fuck about what that guy's memory of that game is and then compare it to my own. And are you ready? Because this is how whack you people on Reddit are. I'm supposed to then make room for the idea that 14-year-old's Cheeto dust-covered interpretation of that game. I should just go, well, maybe your point is better than mine. I'll just overwrite my own experience with your dog shit thoughts. So anyway, to go back, I agree with what Monty said there. Memory actually doesn't work like a static thing. I actually think memory is a bit more like computer memory. It's like a mix of computer memory and hard drive. Like, it's like basically the stuff you actively use almost like lets you access the hard drive, as it were. Like, if you're not currently keeping up on stuff, the other stuff might be there, but it just becomes so far back, it's that you can't reach back to it. Whereas I actually think one of the factors that's helped me in my career is because I do so much historical stuff. I'm always finding a way to reference back and a way to find an excuse to look at what they did in this season. And it just refreshes it for you. So I think, to me, memory's like an active thing. I always say this, to me, memory is like a muscle itself. You have to work out in the gym of the mind to keep it fresh, you know, otherwise it'll degrade.
True. Meme question. In an alternate reality, which team would win at MSI 2015 in Tallahassee, Florida? Monty's CLG or Thorin's Fnatic? Thorin's Fnatic would crush me that year. They made semis of Worlds last year. They were like really good in 2015. My CLG was not very good. You have a different take? No, you would have.
I think he's memeing and meaning like if I'd have been the coach.
But I mean,
obviously that lineup was cracked compared to yours, wasn't it? You had fucking Links or you had Dexter, etc. Like, it was a bit of a scuff lineup.
Yeah, that Fnatic roster was actually very good that year. I can't answer this, but you can. Does Alex Pereira make your top 5 MMA GOAT list? If not, what would he have to do to be in the GOAT conversation? How would he get into the top 5?
Right, off the top of my head, he might have had like 7 MMA fights or something. Like, what a ridiculous statement. What he means by this is, right, this guy is a guy who was a kickboxing fighter and he came into MMA and he's been really good. He's like won a bunch of championships and won loads of big fights, and almost every fight's been a knockout, so understandably he's mega. I'd say it's more like this. He's tracking to one day be a GOAT. Like, he could actually end up being the GOAT potentially if he's still, the problem is he's quite old. If he can get more fights in his career, if he can fight John Jones or something, he could do it. It's more like he just has had an incredibly explosive and impressive like entry to MMA. But you have to realize MMA has been around like a long time now. We're talking like fucking 20 years at this point in time in terms of high level MMA. So the people who are like top 5 GOATs, they're really fucking special fighters. So I'd say he's on the fringe where he could get into that group. How about that? I think it's very impressive.
Not realistic, but I think it'd be interesting to have all regions do the spring split from the same region where decided by MSI or most recent worlds. I mean, we've talked about this, the Super League idea. Like, I want the Super League. It would be great.
I love it.
Yeah, it would be great. We only need 20 professional teams in League of Legends. We only need one league. Make the Super League, turn the domestic leagues into tier 2 feeders for the Super League with promotion relegation.
I can tell you for content, it's better. Like in CS, I spent probably 95% of every podcast only discussing the top 10 to 15 teams in the world. I don't waste my time talking about who, like the equivalent of Shopify Rebellion. They wouldn't even get in the discussion. You know what I mean?
No, it'll get there eventually, guys. As league gets smaller, they're going to have to consolidate at some point in time. The problem is we're not going to get this in the peak of the game, unfortunately. Most overused lines in league casting. Too little, too late. I mean, that's a good one. There are a lot of
Cool, calm, and collected. I hate that. Counter-Strike's pretty bad for it, but they never stop using that phrase, mate. Cool, calm, and collected. That's what
I hate the one that League made up, which is the phrase aggressed upon, which is not even something anybody ever fucking says. It's not a platitude. Yeah. You can actually just use real fucking words such as attacked, intercepted, you know? Why are we using aggressed upon? Nobody ever fucking says that. And you know what's weird is it's just spread like this cancer. So it spread like this virus from like caster to caster, where it's like, none of you guys ever said aggressed upon before you started casting League of Legends. That's not a human sentence. Like, now everybody just says it. It's horrible. And it honestly just remove so much more descriptive language that could be used to actually describe the situation that's happened. Ambushes, you know, whatever you want.
Yeah, I'll tell you an obvious one, because if you ever listen, this is where I know people haven't been in the industry, so you don't know the technical aspects, and you just haven't watched long enough to know. Like, obviously, the more familiar you get, familiarity breeds contempt. You start to see the things you don't like about the person. I'll give you another one, since I know people got really upset when I critiqued Dracos that one time. I'll tell you another Dracos one I don't like. He, 1 million times over, tries to crowbar in some kind of terminology like Theon-esque of like, he's a god. To kill a god, you must become a god. This is a god. This is the birth of a god. A god can bleed. Everything's just, it's like some shit Game of Thrones writing, mate. Like, use that sparingly more. Use it sparingly. You're using it too much. You're spamming it too much, mate. You're trying to force the epicness.
The other one is comes from like D-Man back in the day, which is like off the back of, which is like such a British expression. Yeah. So it sounds super janky when you hear non-British people say it.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, that I feel like that one just has to be said with a British accent. Otherwise, it just is very weird. How do you avoid getting gaslit by horrible takes / opinions? You just ignore them, and you try not to interact with people.
Ready, Monty. This is actually the reason why all the people who have the best original takes get hated on, because essentially the fan translation goes, we all agree and you're in the minority. Why don't you just agree with us? And we go, no, because we are not being stubborn. We are just doubling down on our perception of the game. Like, essentially, I've always said this. I've never lied ever in esports, right? I just say what makes sense to me. Now, by the way, in League, I don't claim to be like the biggest expert. Maybe sometimes I don't get what a player's doing. Maybe there's some subtlety to it. But I think essentially, if you want to be a pundit, someone on camera with opinions, you have to form your own perspective. And
be interesting.
You have to be like, yeah, you have to also be loyal to your perspective. Like, you have to be like true to it. You can't change. Like, oh wait, the fans are saying, I guess I just think. No, I don't think. Like, what would the point of that be, Cadril? So did I say that out loud? Shit. Oh, it's on air camera again. Shit. Whatever. Oh well. Whatever.
From our favorite troll, Butt Pounder 420. Which one of your dads would win in a fight? I will tell you, not my dad. I don't even know.
Monty's, look, he doesn't know anything about my family. But here's the thing, though. Monty's dad is like a super chill, laid back guy as well. Just doesn't seem like a fighter. You know what I mean?
My dad is a scientist, but he's like, he's not like a small guy. Like, he's like 6 feet, 180, 200 pounds. Say I'm a little taller than he is, and like, about the same weight. But I mean, like, the thing about my dad is he has actually the lowest situational awareness of any human that I've ever seen, to the degree that if he got into a fight, he may not even realize he is in a fight. So he can't possibly win a fight.
I would just say, of all the many things that we probably would match up badly in, people from Northeast, I think would win a few fights.
Yeah.
A few bar brawls. If we can give us anything, we can surely get that one,
So I love my dad. He's great. He would not win a fight. Create the 2 most internationally competitive teams with current/teamless LEC players. I think we already did that. Didn't we do that like last week? Create
something like that. But the problem you always get with that is it's the status of whether they're actually teamless or bench is always difficult in it. So it's hard to make those squads too.
Internationally with current/teamless, the 2 most internationally with current players as well. I mean, I think you'd have a harder time creating a better roster than fucking G2, right?
Oh, wait, maybe they don't. He means like we can take everyone and make like the ultimate team.
I guess, yeah. The 2 most internationally competitive team with current/teamless LEC players. I mean,
G2, you know what? Even though I'll tell you what, if you want, I could change G2, Monty. There's players I might change in G2.
I mean, you can probably change jungle and AD.
I might change a few. Like I'll tell you what, I'd put Razork in there. I might put Kazi instead of Hansam. I've got a few players I might change.
Exactly.
These are pretty good players.
But if we were like, and also what? Let me be very clear.
By the way,
G2 is currently internationally competitive, guys. They at MSI, they were a top 4 team in the world. Like nobody could argue they weren't a top 4 team in the world.
Right, I don't care if you're Yikes' dad. Are you telling me the idea of Razork and Caps doesn't excite you? That sounds fucking amazing, by the way. I think that's it. Though that duo would win so many games, mate. So many games. They'd tear them up.
As for other teams that you could make, I mean, surely you could make some relatively competitive. I mean, depending on Humanoid's performance, like we know Humanoid can in fact be good. And I imagine that Jankos could get back into form. I mean, I don't think he's had an amazing year by any standard, but like Jankos could probably be up there. But Razork has been very good. I mean, I think Yike is fine. I mean, if Yike can be on a top 4 team in the world, that's not bad for him. You could definitely create a competitive team around Razork as well. I would like to see probably Photon in a better roster. You could also argue Bo might be good in the right roster with the right shot calling. Irrelevant has been very good.
Labrov's pretty fucking good this year. Some pretty good players. That's actually one of the saddest thing about LEC for me really is. That's why I always blame it on the GMing. I actually think the player quality, there's some fabulous players in LEC. In fact, it's almost now, Monty, like the old dream that they used to have for American franchise sports, where the idea would be every franchise would have an all-star. That's what LEC feels like. The problem is, though, just the mixes of them doesn't mean the actual overall teams are that strong. You can go to the bottom of the LEC and still find good players. Like we said about, dude, Carsey's in like what last place is what mental. Like this guy's really good.
Yeah. Who do you think are the most underappreciated players by newer fans to LoL esports and why? Probably Perks is top of that list right now.
Oh, easy. I mean, people think he's a bomb. Yeah.
Like a lot. If you were a newer fan,
know how brilliant that guy was. Yeah.
Yeah. If you were a newer fan who didn't see him like prior to his Cloud9 and you just saw him coming back to LEC, you would probably be very confused as to why people venerate Perks. Underappreciated otherwise. I mean, at this point in time, it's probably been far enough along that, you know, players that we haven't seen compete really internationally in a while, like Canyon maybe, might be pretty underappreciated, despite the fact that he is a World Finals MVP player. Probably some of the players that have like choked on the world stage, like Kanavi, probably people don't think very well of right now.
It's actually good, Monty, that you're also one of the people who doesn't look at Twitch chat when the show's going on. Because earlier on, when we were having that Chovy discussion, a guy, unironically, while discussing what Chovy has to do, tried to imply that because he saw Faker without T1 without Faker, that was another reason why Chovy isn't the best. Like Chovy sitting in his chair with nothing changing and Porpy sitting down and being bad made Chovy worse. That's how broken the brain of a T1 fan is. When you can understand that, you can understand the world they live in. So I made that joke that they almost should bring in a bad player just to show how good Chovy is or something. So it's wild, isn't it? What a world. By the way, in terms of underrated players, I always thought, because I followed a lot of fan opinions, I always thought people never gave Odo Amne his grace when he was really good.
Yep.
One of the all-time. By the way, here's what I don't get, Monty. How the fuck can you love Impact and then think Odo Amne is not that good? They're like the same fucking player, you idiots. They're the same player. They require zero resources. They play weak side. They play attack. They do a really good job. They can play internationally, and then they have the odd carry game. Like, if you don't like one, you like the other. Like, I don't know if it's the game that you're determined of. I just going off some K-pop angle. Also, by the way, obviously, anyone in the modern day was slumping. Everyone now, this is the worst one of all, Monty. They actually pretend Upset was always bad and never good, ever. Like he just got away with it for all those years somehow, as opposed to he's just playing way worse this last year or so. You know, like give me a break. That guy, remember, he was on Fnatic. They were the best bot lane in fucking Europe, mate. When it was him and Hillside, they were the shit.
Sure.
A few years back.
What I can't answer this one, but you can. What do you think of Gareth Southgate, Thorin? For fun, is there a coach in esports you compare him to? I know the Southgate stuff has been the meme of the Euros for England. I only see like highlights and like soccer filtered through social media, so it has been pretty entertaining for me because everybody just hates this guy.
The problem is, I'll explain it very briefly. The basic problem is this. Since England invented football and is always a massive, like, big media presence, because obviously our media goes crazy if it's still the big sport, the problem is the expectation anyway, much like America in, like, the world in general, is you're supposed to be the best or one of the best. Like, you're supposed to always be in contention to be the best. Yeah. Then the other problem you have is there have been a few different golden generations of talent that came through for England. Famously, there was one in the 90s, there's one now, etc. And the issue you have is they often haven't made use of this because they've only ever won one international tournament. They won the World Cup in 1966. So the problem you have is people expect you to win. Now, this is where the Southgate angle gets nuanced, which is technically Gareth Southgate's aggregate results at international tournaments are very good. He's been in like semis and finals, always in the playoffs. But the problem people don't get is this. If you look historically, that's actually pretty good for England. Often we have like some more dodgy results. But this is where everyone gets lost in single factor analysis. The factor isn't how does the word England on a page do in all of history, because it's not the same players, is it? The question you have to ask is, given the players you have, how well did you perform? And the problem Gareth Southgate has is this. He appears to have one of the absolute best golden generations of talent throughout the team. And essentially, a lot of those good placings is actually because he got very lucky bracket draws and he just played the worst nations and beat them. And then every time they got to a good nation, there's only basically one time ever they won, which was against Germany. And actually, that was probably the worst German team in like 40 years or something mad. So he hasn't actually really like won the big games you'd expect. He has a mega roster. He's just sort of gotten bracket locks. He's gotten to like a deep finish, but then they're never really actually like making use of the talent. Because if you ever watch how they play, he essentially plays an incredibly cynical defensive style. And then England just tries to win like 1-0 and sometimes doesn't as a result. Whereas with the players we have, you would essentially ideally play an opposite. You play a very attacking style and you'd play trying to just score because you've got so much talent. You've also, by the way, with Harry Kane, the striker, you got one of the best strikers ever. You got someone who's just like an auto goal. That's like a win condition right there, and they don't necessarily play this aggressive style to get him goals. So I would say, actually, if you want to use a modern example, I would say maybe it's like Freddie 1-2-2 from Rogue, where even at the best, they always played a little bit of a pussy style of league, didn't they? Like they never really took those players and unleashed them. They always tried to like play like similarly a very tightrope style, where if you can walk the tightrope, you can make it. But if you flip and fall, you're fucked and you're over. So I'd say it's something like that. It'd have to be a coach where maybe they didn't have the most aggressive style and they didn't try and maximize players. They were a little bit more calculated, sometimes in a negative way. Because as I say, if you had a bad team, a style like that might be really good. But if you have a lot of really good players, like right now, basically, the midfielders in England are fabulous. Like you don't want to like put those people in like a defensive system. You want to like have them play make and then run people off the pitch. Like essentially England's problem is you don't score and then park the bus and try and win 1-0. That's like Italy 20 years ago. What you should do is if you score a goal, now you have license to just run rampage over the other team and try and win like 4-0 or 4-1, go crazy and blow them out. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good answer. There you go.
Very helpful. On Snake and Banter, Thorin joked about Cadian and Zeus to Fnatic. Assuming you take them and then the only player you have to keep from the current roster is Blame F, what is your ultimate Isle of Misfit Toys roster for Fnatic? So it'd be Cadian, Zeus, Blame F, and two other players. Who would they be?
I mean, Zeus is a coach, though. So what does he mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yes. So Cadian
so
and Blame F.
I'd have to put 3 other players.
Yeah.
I have to pick 3 other players.
For the Isle of Misfit Toys roster for Fnatic.
Okay. Let me think who else we can do there. But I've got KD and Blame F. Immediately, my boy Config can just come back. Pop him in. We've got some Danes already we're working with here. Pop him in the lineup. He's a good one. Who else could we actually put in this lineup? If people know, he just came back recently. The Lithuanian player Esperanto's actually back. He's a guy who went away because his career had kind of fallen. Remember, he was in contact back in
Flashpoint. I remember.
His problem is he kind of like had an attitude issue, so he got a bit lost in the sauce, and then he went and did like his military service in Lithuania or whatever. And by the way, I will say as well, shout out to those countries in the Baltic region / Finland. I used to make fun of you having that mandatory military service because I always used to say, "What, you're gonna have a bloody war with Russia anytime soon?" You know what? You might have been right on that one. You know what? My bad. Mea culpa. Can always be right. I thought that was an age take, but you know what? Maybe you guys win that one at the end. So it's Brent O's one. I thought he was a mega player. Let me think who else. Who else would I maybe do? Maybe one more. Oh, I've got one more for you. It might not work because, to be fair, I don't know what the language angle. But I actually did think the player in Gambit called Inters, who was kind of like the support player. He wasn't a high fragger, but he was one of those people who like knew what to do as a role play, could like hold the enemy up and communicate very well and hold a position well in a way that was like stabilizing. I'd put him on. So there you go. That's not a bad little roster of players. Pretty interesting mix.
There you go. Has Thorin uninstalled League of Legends after Vanguard went live, or is he still absolutely terrorizing people with freeze pike?
If you know this, Monty, one thing a lot of people don't know about me is because, all right, I'll have to make a slightly larger tangent here. In life is inherently unfair, Monty, not least because fairness is obviously a human created concept. It can't exist. Even the gods, by definition, every religion ever, you'll notice, by the way, what they never say, Monty, is that God is fair. Have you noticed that? They go, God is love, but they never say, even when they say justice, Monty, that never actually implies fair. That means he has his decision on what the value is. So what I'll say is life itself isn't about being fair. So once I learned life isn't fair, I don't actually, by the way, just think like, oh, this sucks, I'm losing in this way. So what I do is if things go badly, I just like find a way to minimize if they can go as badly. I try to get ahead of the problem next time instead of just whining and going, but this person didn't get it. So an example I've often given is everyone else in esports gets to do React content. They can play someone else's video, they can show the game, and none of them ever get copyright strike, do they? But I'll tell you why I don't do it, Monty, because in theory, someone could copyright strike me and take my whole channel down. And I have learned in life, I won't get the clemency of like, I won't get banned. I'll probably just get banned and then, yeah, it'll be really unfair. So basically, what was the original question about?
Has Thorin uninstalled League of Legends after Vanguard
There you go.
live?
So unfortunately, as soon as I heard those reports about Vanguard, I have never opened League of Legends client again. Because unfortunately, for example, even just the most basic thing, even if it was only a 1% chance, Monty, that by opening it, it bricks my PC, I don't want my PC to be bricked and have all these days. So unfortunately, as soon as this is why I'm not joking. I know I'm weird like this, but I will probably never play League of Legends unless I hear that's all being fixed. Because I don't want that shit.
I haven't installed Vanguard either.
Scary. It's actually scary to me when you tell me can fuck my whole PC, you know.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting till I open it and then fucking it does that thing where, you know, when the PC reboots and like you can't even boot up like BIOS, like yeah, that's what I want from playing League of Legends. So yeah, sadly, all of EU West in whatever incredibly low level I was at is now safe from the Pike terrorists. Yes, they are now all safe. It turns out, actually, you know what, Monty? Incredibly invasive, rights violating security and scrutiny actually does stop terrorism. There you go. Okay, who knew? In the end, they were right after all. The war on terror did win. We win.
Is there currently an org with a whacker brand identity than FlyQuest? I never liked the whole we're the good guys environmentalist shtick. I don't know who thought it would be a good idea to be the Toms of esports, but now they have the roster with the reputed most toxic play. I don't think they're toxic. And after all that environmentalist saved the world pabulum, they are now participating in a tournament hosted by an oppressive regime funded by oil money. It's worth noting that the ownership changed between these two things. So what happened is that FlyQuest was owned by the Edens family, who owned the Milwaukee Bucks NBA team. And what happened was they sold it to the ownership group behind the Florida Panthers hockey team. So it's an entirely different ownership group. And the Edens team were not putting any money into this, which is why Trisha Sugita, who was the CEO, had to come up with angles to make the team interesting. And I think, to her credit, with basically no money, she figured out that kind of like environmentalist shtick for them, which was better than not having a brand identity at all. But now they actually have a lot more money being put into the team, and they're trying to do some different stuff. So, I mean, my thing with FlyQuest is like, why are they keeping the name FlyQuest? It's trash, and like just rebrand now that you have an entirely different ownership and new identity. So, I think the brand is bad is the answer, and they need to fix it. How quickly would a team consisting of Evi, Bengi, Ryoma, Piglet, Targamas tilt the ever-loving fuck out of Dom? That's funny. Very fast.
There. Pretty good team he's put together there.
Which social media has the most brain-dead users?
Oh, he means of the types like Facebook, Twitter, I'm YouTube,
probably
maybe.
Facebook. The thing about TikTok is you actually do have to be kind of compelling at making content to be good at TikTok. I think you can't be that brain dead and be good at TikTok.
You meant users, not like comments and stuff, right? Yeah. I see. Okay.
Like the thing about TikTok is if you're actually on there, I mean, most people are just plebs, but like TikTok requires pretty high effort and like. You have to be pretty clever.
Means in esports, because I do think in esports, people's quality of tweets is utterly dog shit. I don't think people even put any effort into crafting. Remember, like
Twitter's pretty bad.
You could try and be witty. People just saw shit how they tweet.
It's also easier to abuse people on Twitter than other forms of social media, but Facebook is pretty low. The NBA has been creating rules designed to kill dynasties and super teams. What are the pros and cons of this approach?
Have they really done that? The problem, basically, the main problem you have in all
the
American
luxury
sports,
tax.
As far as I know, the main problem in every American sport is you can always cheat as the star player, like LeBron, and just take less money. Or Tom Brady. You can just always do that. You can. That's why. By the way, I don't think people get. I actually do. I'm not joking. Consider that cheating. By the way. Because what you've done there, Monty, is this. We've designed a system where to provide parity and balance against people getting an economic advantage, we're assuming everyone will try and get their maximum value. Well, you've then cheated by taking less than your maximum value intentionally so that someone else who's really good can join your team and your team can be better than the actual economic value of the team implies you should. So if you're Tom Brady or LeBron, you are a cheater, and I actually think you fucking suck. So sadly, it doesn't matter what the NBA does. These people will always be able to do that, mate. They'll always be able to. Like the worst one, actually, sometimes isn't even the stars. It's when like someone who was a star takes like a veteran's minimum to like ring chase. That's probably the grossest shit of all time. Because there's people who could have made like $10 million that year on a bad team and played out the end of their career, and they make like $1 million and then win a ring because like they're like a way better bench player than you should have. Like I think at that point, like the problem with that is the NBA can't fix that. If the player chooses to take less money, you sort of checkmate. You can't really account for that, can you? So I don't really think there's a way. I wouldn't worry about it. There's not a way around it. If they want to make super teams, they'll always make super teams.
I think the NBA actually has been like pretty dynastic, at least in my opinion, as somebody who watches it from the outside. I mean, definitely less recently, but like, look at the Lakers, man. Like, what the fuck is that? Over decades, or the Celtics, right? I'm not gonna. I don't want to talk about Nietzsche right now.
Oh, if people don't know, by the way, if you actually add together all the titles of just the Lakers and the Celtics, they've won like over half the NBA championships ever.
It's ridiculous.
Something mad like that. Something absurd like that.
Yeah. But it does seem they're trying to tamp down on it with luxury taxes and like, also the supermax contracts, so teams like smaller market teams can actually retain their players. Like, I think that's pretty fun. So
I think that's a good
you
thing,
can actually have a player make a lot of money.
Incentivizes loyalty.
Yeah,
you can actually.
So I actually really like. I really like that the supermax contracts are only for the teams the players.
Yes,
are
I think that's good.
So that's good. And like the question was, I can't imagine that two sports purists would enjoy this change. I mean, I actually do in a way because I enjoy some level of parity within competition, and otherwise you just get baseball, which is fucking gross in terms of the amount of money that the Dodgers can like throw around. It just feels lame. Anyway, there's a question about God being dead and Nietzsche that I don't want to answer right now, so we're not going to do that. Should the Moose trio of Suhi, Jimfat, and Zershin, and maybe even their coach, try to go to an org like G2 or Vitality as a package deal, or try to make Moose upgrade from Torsi and Brolin? If not now, then after the Shanghai Major. I personally think the romance of being... Oh, go for it.
Oh, go on. Just finish the question.
I personally think the romance of being good friends and same age is overrated when you can never guarantee that you will keep your current form for years.
It's also nonsense. Are you ready for a gem? This is a league show, so who gives a shit? No one in CS will post this on Reddit, right? I can tell you already, some of those players already literally could and would have left that team. I won't say who, but at least one of those names would already be in a different org if that had been accepted / the contract had worked out the way they wanted. So already take that friendship narrative and throw it in the bin, you child. I mean, I know he didn't do it, but people do believe that shit.
No, he also doesn't like that. He thinks it's nonsense.
but he's playing into a very popular consensus, stupid take, right? Which doesn't exist. So the real angle is this. Mouse as an org also is never going to be the people who pay the most. Like, the joke is Falcons can actually pay every person like 3 to 4 times more if they want. So basically, to me, it's inevitable some of these players will leave. It's actually why I actually think the interesting thing is Mouse is really good. And if they're not in a stage environment, they can beat anyone. So I think they have this last season. I think they've got this last season in the major. If they do something there, maybe they stay together. Otherwise, I think most of these players will be picked apart by not. But here's the problem. It won't be like you're saying. They can't group together and go as a power trio. Like, it's not going to work that way. What's going to happen instead is it's going to be each one goes separately to a different team. So as you say, maybe a team, maybe a Vitality signs Jim Part in 6 months. Maybe Shuhei goes and is the G2 IGL, like you say. Maybe fucking Exertion players for, I don't know, Team Liquid or something. Whatever it is. I do think down the line, these really good players will almost inevitably take them because they're just too good to be on Mouse, basically. And Mouse has killed it. They've done a great job. They're getting to enjoy them right now for whatever they pay them. They've built that squad up. It came from the academy, but it won't last forever. Like, just because, as you say, the org Mouse isn't G2. And so unfortunately, those big dogs, if they play it right, will always eventually get the talent. So I do think eventually they will. I just don't think it'll be a package thing. And also, I think you're really overestimating player loyalty. There's very few players actually will be like, we're a package. The joke is, if you go to the player even says you're a package and go, what about if I take only you, but I pay you 50K a month? Then magically they're not a package anymore. You know what I mean? I feel like that's the way esports works.
Who is your favorite director of the 2000s, the 2010s, and who has been your favorite director of the 2020s so far? I don't really think of directors by decades like that. Do you?
Well, I mean, luckily for me, pretty much all of Christopher Nolan's career is the 2000s, so I could probably just take Christopher Nolan for that one.
The 2000s is pretty fair for Christopher Nolan.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
I mean, 2010s, who was like good in the 2010s? I mean, Paul Thomas Anderson, who we're doing now. Wes Anderson was pretty good in the 2010s. I feel like that's when Wes Anderson like got really good. I mean, obviously, Denis Villeneuve in the 2010s was really good. A lot of the movies that we watched were from the 2010s.
Pretty much all the ones we liked. Yep, yeah, that was pretty good.
The 2020s. I mean, I love Ari Aster, so like he's way up there for me as a newer director.
There you go.
Did you guys see the footage of the Tic Tac shaped UFOs that the U.S. government released a few years ago? I have not. Allegedly, they travel incredibly fast, can stop instantly, and don't have any sort of traditional propulsion mechanism. Do you think there's a chance that this is anything other than some sort of visual phenomena? So the thing about Roswell was that they were actually high-altitude military balloons that the military was testing. Like, those UFOs that people saw at Roswell in New Mexico were, in fact, top-secret military tech, right? So probably not these ones, but, like, you know, didn't the Congress just have a hearing about that in the United States?
They keep doing like disclosure where they gradually
they call them like what, unidentified aerial UAPs, phenomena, UAFs now, or something like that, or UAPs. Yeah.
Like I think that's what you're saying.
So yeah, I mean, look, a lot of the time they're probably something.
My problem is this: I've got two components to it. One, I already think the flaw in this thinking is the assumption that like what you are currently shown as tech is the only tech that exists for humans. Like, for example, I think if you look into certain alternate history stuff, it's inferred, it's not implausible. There is anti-grav tech. We just don't have it in our current modern world of consumerism and like the petrol powered machines, for example. And then the other angle I'll put out there, but I'm going to put it as a breadcrumb, and it's up to you to do with it what you will. I would just say it's much more interesting if you actually consider UFOs and things like that potentially a spiritual phenomenon.
Yeah.
Maybe the reason you see it and nobody else does, or you don't get a great video, is maybe it's actually something to do with your consciousness or some sort of collective consciousness. So I would just say this angle is a breadcrumb. Every time you look up, imagine you are looking up at a spiritual domain, not a physical one. There you go.
There you go. I like it.
What
are your opinions on the current level of censorship on YouTube, as well as the proliferation of TikTok vocabulary such as unalive? It is very funny because, like,
basically that we have to use euphemisms instead of saying kill yourself or whatever.
Right. And you can't say like died or anything. I mean, I've had conversations with like my editor, you know, or YouTube manager about this, where it's like they want to, you know, if I say kill in League of Legends, they'll like censor that out of the TikTok video.
Oh, wow.
They'll like bleep it out. So, I mean, there is this whole thing. I mean, I don't like it, but I also understand that due to the volume of content, they can't be reasonably they have to use algorithms to identify this stuff. And like there obviously could be much more incendiary content or, you know, potentially very graphic content in not a good way about, you know, using some of those terms or, you know, very extreme content. So, you know, if they want to avoid that kind of content, but I do think it's funny how they have to, now the euphemisms are coming through and everything like that and the censorship. Also, I mean, some of our shows get flagged for like limited advertisements for no fucking reason, as far as I can tell, which is very annoying. And I have, you know, we don't get any feedback, so I think it's a little extreme right now, in my opinion, the level of censorship, and a little silly. Monty, are you planning on doing more power ranking videos? You, Dom, and Cage seem like the only three people that can do a legitimate global power rankings. Yeah, I mean, that's the problem, guys, is that the people who are most able to do them are the people who don't have time to do them because we're so busy trying to keep up on all of global League of Legends. I would also probably add Nymera to that list. I think he keeps up with, you know, all basically all the regions as well, but it is really fucking hard. And I agree that the pool of people is very, very small who could like actually make that kind of content. The thing is it takes me a long time to make that kind of content because I have to sit there and take a bunch of notes and think about my reasoning for every one. So probably is the answer, but I need to figure out time in order to do that. Do you guys like Warhammer? I play the Total War Warhammer games, but I've never been a tabletop Warhammer player.
I used to be interested in it when I was like a teenager because like it's like a nerd thing, and if back then it was more of a division of who people are, so it's the sort of thing that nerds were into, along with computer games, unsurprisingly, and comic books and all shit I was into.
I played BattleTech.
The problem
I played the BattleTech tabletop game, not Warhammer.
I'm not someone who has the patience to do all the painting parts. I never got into that part because that is incredibly time consuming and expensive too, by the way, for all the different fucking shades of color, etc. So I would just say, I actually personally, this is actually why I find it sad, a lot of the stupid walk shit they're injecting now. The actual best part of Warhammer to me was the lore. The fact all those codexes and all the like backstory.
The Warhammer 40K lore is super cool.
Yeah, there was some amazing shit there. Like it was mega.
Yeah,
I thought that stuff really interesting. It was very well written. Yeah.
Like I said, I used to play the BattleTech miniatures game, and I did used to paint those when I was a teenager. So I played a different miniatures game. But I would say, like, for me, I never got into the tabletop version, but I have played the games, and you know, I think, you know, I'm excited about like the Henry Cavill 40K series potentially. Like that sounds really cool. I think the
was
lore
it implied that's going to get cancelled though because he doesn't want to do it now because they're like fucked with the series.
Oh, did he? I don't know. Whatever.
I heard basically that the
really?
same thing as The Witcher. What happened is when they started fucking with the material, because they were trying to make it where they were like retconning that like a bunch of Warhammer characters were like female forever or some stupid shit like that. So when they did this, I heard it's pissed him off and he might not do it. That's the rumor, at least. That's the rumor. Even though apparently he was like a lifelong fan, people say.
Oh yeah. So anyway, like I do think a lot of the games and stuff that they do with 40K is cool. I don't like the Age of Sigmar stuff in Warhammer in the original. So I like the original world that they made into the Total War games, which I really love those games. I like playing Lizardmen. I like the Aztec dinosaurs. Do you feel like there is an ideal time to retire? I am all for skilled players getting the bag, but it seems like a lot of great players seem to tarnish their legacy by playing long past their prime instead of retiring sooner and having a greater legacy. Yes, I mean, it's a constant battle. Like, players always want to play more because they don't want to think, like, they always want the glorious one last ride, right? And they always think, well, if I just do it with this new team on this new split where I'm the leader now, you know, surely it's going to go better this time. And I do think that it is the fault a lot of times of the players that they don't know when to retire. But at the same time, if they're getting a giant bag for being on a bad team when they're not in their prime anymore, are we really blaming them? Like, financially, it's probably the right move for them, unless they have another prospect, you know, like streaming or something. But most pro players aren't charismatic enough to do that. So I think it really is like an individual case-by-case basis. What do you think?
I just don't accept the framing. Like, I'll give you an example. The best one ever is Michael Jordan. The consensus take goes like this. He should have just retired after the Bulls. When he came back in the Wizards, he ruined his legacy. He didn't, though. Everyone still says he's the GOAT. Everyone still says the champions are the best. What you mean is you wouldn't know what a slightly older Michael Jordan, who was slightly not as good, would have looked like. That's it. In what way does 39-year-old Michael Jordan's performance change what you think about 36-year-old Michael Jordan? I don't get it. So I would say this. I would say it's you that has the problem, not the player. Like, if Suarez had retired after that World's Finals, like, yeah, he'd probably be thought of a lot better. But that's only because you guys have recency bias and you don't think about the history of the game. Like, if you look at, the obvious example to me would be this. By that logic, Deft would never have won Worlds because he would have retired years ago.
Yeah, that's true.
So he couldn't tarnish his legacy. Here's a good one for you. By your own logic, Faker's tarnishing his legacy right now, guys. Individually, he is tarnishing the fuck out of his legacy. He is making a whole generation of people only remember Faker as a guy from 2018 onwards who was never the best mid laner in the world. So did he? Of course he didn't. He won more championships. In fact, it's kind of cool how he reinvented himself.
Yeah,
so I don't accept the whole premise. Personally, I'm the opposite, Monty. I hope every great player plays every single second they still want to play. I don't give a fuck what a fan thinks. If they want to play, I hope they play. Now, if you want to blame someone, you can blame the teams. Maybe the team shouldn't sign a player who's washed, like Fallen and Furia, but I don't blame Fallen for wanting to play still. I don't think he's a very good player, but if he wants to play still, and if he can even give me one game that's a magic rollback game, it's worth it. That's my take. I have a very different perspective. I don't think it tarnishes your legacy, in my opinion. I think your career is your whole career, and I think all GOAT discussions should only be your prime years anyway. I think it's stupid to act like, it's an aggregate of even at the end if you're 40 and you keep playing. Like, I don't think it works that way, personally.
Fair take. All right. That was the last question for this week, guys. So we will see you same time next week to discuss the entirety of the Esports World Cup. Till then.